Kind of weird.
Yeah.
Where's everybody? Well, the applicant group, I think, is doing in the lobby. They're on deck.
Any reason not to call all the recommendations to public hearing together? Talk about one specifically here.
A, B, and C are all interrelated. D is a standalone, but it doesn't matter.
Are we ready, Mr. Chair?
It won't take.
Recording in progress.
We didn't get an updated agenda. The agenda came out. We didn't get an updated agenda this
I
week,
don't
but
think so.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Updated agenda.
so I know sometimes you send an update.
Oh, no, what I said is
I call to order this October 8th, 2024 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. Start with our meeting minutes from September 24th, 2024. I have a motion on the item. Oh, I'm sorry. We will be Commissioner Collins and Siebert, you'll be sitting in for Commissioners Ford and Harrison.
Thank you.
You up to, speed all set? I have a motion on the meeting minutes, Commissioner Porcello.
To approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second? Commissioner Levy seconds. That's from Commissioner Porcello, Commissioner Levy, agreed. Any comments or questions from the rest of the commission? We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. What, 6 hands or 7? 7 hands. Passes unanimously. Next category is new applications for recommendation of public hearing. I'll call them all together because take them all together. Zoning regulation amendment application of Shapiro Commons LLC to amend section 10.6 of the zoning regulations regarding permitted density in the design residence district. 430-452 Stilson Road, zone change application of Shapiro Commons LLC to establish a design residence district on land presently zoned residence A. 432 Stilson Road, special permit application of Shapiro Commons LLC pertaining to a proposed 18-unit residential development. 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University for conversion of existing building for use as a student residence hall in the AA zone.
The first 3 items, Mr. Chairman, are all related, obviously, to 452 Stilson Road. There's a proposal for an 18-unit development that contemplates a zone change from Residence A to Design Residence District, as well as an amendment to increase the permitted density therein. So it's a 3-pronged application that will be heard together. Item D, North Benson Road, Fairfield University. This is the former Dolan School of Business. Some of you may recognize it as the former Center for Financial Studies building on campus. They're looking to convert that existing building for use for student residence. So those obviously a separate application, but it's not new construction, it's conversion of an existing building.
We saw a pre-application for the first 3, I think, right? Is that the, they come to us on that?
I think it did, yes. It all kind of together.
Can I have a motion for the somewhat omnibus items that I sent? Commissioner Corsillo, move to,
Recommend the public hearing.
thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Levy seconds. Any questions about any of the items? Public hearings are required for them. To put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Item passes unanimously. Old business is 265 Autumn Ridge Road, special permit application of Christopher Rosa for excavation and fill in conjunction with a proposed retaining wall in the R3 zone. Mr. Wendt.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this site is bounded on 3 streets, Autumn Ridge Road, Springer Road, and Spring Valley Road. The existing dwelling faces Autumn Ridge and slopes from Autumn Ridge down to Spring Valley Road to the rear. The existing elevation change from the rear of the house down to the street is 14 feet. The applicant is seeking to lessen that slope to make the rear yard more usable. 2 parallel retaining walls are proposed to support the proposed fill. So the slope will run from elevation 100 down to elevation 95. The first wall falls and that steps down another 3 feet to elevation 92. The upper wall tapers from 4 feet in height to 2 feet in height, and the lower wall closer to the road tapers from a height of 6 feet to 2 feet. And the proposal anticipates a total of 500 cubic yards of fill. The plan has been reviewed by the engineering department and meets their concerns for the site. The conservation department has also confirmed that no wetlands review is necessary, and you have emails in the agenda link for that. Should this application be approved, there are 2 recommended conditions. One is that proper erosion and sedimentation controls shall be installed prior to any site disturbance. 2, because the height of the wall, a building permit shall be required to be obtained before site disturbance from the building department. That is all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Porcello,
Move to approve with the conditions outlined in the staff comments.
thank you. Your second, Commissioner Siebert, seconds. Commissioner Porcello,
The request seems reasonable. The engineering department has signed off, meets their concerns. I think with the additional conditions that were recommended, I see no reason not to approve them.
Commissioner Siebert,
No further comments, I agree.
that's fine. It's very straightforward. Questions or comments from the commission? We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Moving on to our public hearing. 2190 Post Road, special exception, special permit and coastal site plan application of UAG Fairfield CP LLC pertaining to new construction for an automobile dealership. Can we add Fairfield? Did we have the name wrong initially? I remember always saying UAG
What
CP.
would I have on that?
UAG Fairfield CP.
Oh,
Is Fairfield stuck in there?
I will check.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
That was quick.
Yeah. Take your time. Application is UAG Fairfield CP LLC.
Yeah, that's what's on the end.
So, commission, for those present joining us remotely, we left off last time with the application in chief. 3 items left to address: landscaping, traffic, and environmental. You has to how you wanna hit those 3. So what the applicant presents on each of those 3 items. Questions at the end of those particular presentations. It's a public comment. And on to rebuttal. We'll see how things go as far as timing. The items left in public comment. Hopefully we can be by the end of the day. If not, we'll talk in an hour about timing, if we have.
So the chairman is right, for the record, Charles Willinger, go, and Brucey, representing the applicant. I think the last witness that was presented last time was our architect, Kevin Spink. And we had one very short 2-minute video, but we couldn't get it up last week in time. But we'd like to show that tonight. That's the interior of a facility, happens to be in Ohio, that was just built, and in fact, it's just been occupied for the last month or so. It's the exact Gen 5 building that we propose to build on this location. So if you could play that on the line, that'd be great. No sound.
There is, but you can't play it on.
Oh. Okay, well, obviously, this is the interior. There was sound, but it's not geared up for sound. This is the service entrance that we were talking about that has 8 cars. This is the actual service portion. This is the interior showroom that we were talking about. You could see the very high-end finishes in the facility. A lot of the Porsches there. And that's it. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. In terms of the questions, I'm not sure that it's exactly the same as the chairman had, but we're here to answer any questions. I thought one of the issues was one of the commissioners wanted to know about our designated parking spaces. I don't know, is that on your list as well? But so we have that. Peter, do we have that?
Yep, you do. Let me just
Oh, you're gonna do, okay. And while Peter is,
trying to figure out the easel.
take your time, I have a,
Everything we posted that's been presented tonight. It's already in there. Oh, that picture was? I didn't see it. The video's on the shared drive for the agenda.
I have a smaller version for the commission now.
We're asking about the video, but you have something else you're gonna be presenting on the record, I assume.
This,
The video's on the town website, you're saying?
Yes,
yes,
thank you.
okay. So you could pass that out, well, Rob is passing that out. I'll let,
In the record.
just to refresh your memory. There are 325 total parking spaces on this site. 5 of them now are dedicated exclusively for the public access easement area. There are 156 cars, spaces rather, for inventory. And the remaining 164 spaces that you were showing you here include 30, and it's also under, this is the inventory, new and used. But the 164 that's not inventory includes 30 for the loaners, 14 lease returns, 50 for service, 30 for customer parking, and 40 for employees. Right now, we have 35 employees. We anticipate within 5 years to have perhaps 40, 45, in that range. And this is color coded, so you can see where they're located on the site. In reference to the, and this obviously public easement area. Now, one of the commission members asked Mr. Capasso, if you recall, if there was any way that at least one row of these parking spaces here on the far west could be eliminated. And Mr. Capasso, as I advised the commission last time, is in Europe now, and I don't have an answer for you tonight. What I do know, because I called corporate myself with Steve out, and corporate said that the Penske operational requirements are based on 30 years of experience at 346 of their dealerships, which include 10 Porsches dealerships. And I was told that the Penske will not even look at a site unless it's a minimum of 5.5 acres and a minimum of 350 total parking. This one is about 5, it's 6.2 less, about 1 acre, 1 acre for the, actually it's not 0.94 acres for the easement area. So the land mass was just about right. No one liked this little cutout for Martell's, but it is what it is. And as I said, we have 325 spaces, and so we're gonna make that work. Whether they could reduce it anymore, I don't have an answer, a solid answer tonight. I will, if we finish tonight, My suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is if I get an answer, I could relay that.
That's fine.
Okay. In terms of the number of parking spaces, that was another question. Most dealerships have at least 350 car park. And a lot of these dealerships have split properties, like Porsche does right now, where they have their service facility in one location and their retail and showroom in another. But if you counted both of those split properties on a lot of these sites, you'll see that the average pretty much is about 350 cars. For informational purposes. Okay, so that's the parking space issue. The other thing that we'd like to talk about is the you said landscaping. I don't recall that issue.
I just remember people having questions about
Okay,
landscaping.
well,
Can
we
I ask
have
a
a
question about parking first, or?
Well, let's go through,
Okay.
is there anything else that you had?
yes. So
Let's
we
go through what he had and then we
wanted
can.
to talk about lighting because that was a question. So we have a lighting plan, Bobby, you can do that.
Oh, we've gone through
And
that.
then we do have another land tech staff member who can talk about the bird issue. I know that was.
She has a parking on question, so let's ask that. Go
Couple
ahead.
quick ones, so there's 320 spaces on top of that, there's 5 public spaces,
Yes.
you're adding to the parking. To add to, there was 322, as I recall in your narrative, you added 3 for the public. So when you say 320, that's for the commercial end, not the public end, and then where the public spaces are they delineated on here in the brown section? Which ones are they?
I'm pointing to the commissioner.
Oh, they're not in the brown
Yeah.
section.
No, they're in that box.
3 spaces here and 2 here.
And that is also the truck egress way as well. It's right turn only leaving, but both ways go, you can come in from either way.
You don't.
Oh, you can't come in there at all?
With land tech, no, you
And
cannot,
the public can come in.
no, nobody can come in that way, the only people that come in there is to those 5 spaces.
Oh, well, so the public
Nobody
can come
goes-
to the 5 spaces.
Correct, but nobody goes to Porsche through that.
Is it a
So
one-way route throughout
it
the
is,
whole thing?
Exactly, you're right.
So this is all one way
You
throughout,
got it, exactly.
okay.
The idea is so that, and Corey's gonna explain this to traffic, the idea is, and this, like a lot of the part, unlike some of the other dealerships, you bring your trailer truck in there, unload on site, and then leave.
Okay, and then another question, last time you said the employees would be increased to being 45. This has spaces for 40, is that, how do you accommodate those if you grow the business to 45 employees?
If we do grow to 45, we're going to have to squeeze them in at perhaps a couple lease return spaces or loaner spaces. We've got to make it work at the employees.
Okay. And then the service, the green ones, there's 50, what is that for? Is that for customers leaving their cars? But I thought
Customers,
they all fit in the building now.
well, don't forget there are 10 bays working on cars and there's a lot of times they have warranty parts that have to be shipped in. So the cars are there, they get a loaner. I know we have 1 or 2 customers I know personally that have had the cars there for 2 weeks waiting for the supply chain.
So service is for customers, to put their
Yes.
cars.
Yes.
So you add the service and the customer, the pink one, that's dealership customers, not repair customers?
No, the pink are the people that are coming to the site to look at the inventory.
Okay, but buyers, okay. So you really have 2 types of customers, service customers and
Yes.
dealer customers, so to speak. So the service customer, so that's a total of 80 customers. And then the last time, I just wanna clarify, I think you said there were 23 service bays and then either 5 or 10 detailing bays, that's separate from service?
I don't know the number of detailing bays. Anybody? 5, we have 5 detailing bays.
And 23 service bays.
23 service bays on the plans, but we utilize 10 of those service bays.
Why do you only use 10 if you have 20?
We have 10 mechanics and that's how we do it. The reason why we have 23 is because it's a requirement of the manufacturer.
So some are empty all the time, or do you have cars waiting to?
Some of them are empty, some of them have cars, but we have 10 mechanics actually servicing the cars.
Would it be anticipated you would grow the business into the 23? It seems like,
Not within 5 years. They do 5-year plans every year. It's a 5-year plan. And they think service will increase, but not anywhere near that.
okay, and then the loaners and leased vehicle, those are two different things. The loaner, 30 loaners, that seems like a lot when you only have 10 repaired at one time. This might be a Mr. Capasso question, but but why would there be so many loaner that people,
I'll make a question.
so they don't go to Enterprise to get a car, you give them a loaner. They don't go to like Hertz or Enterprise to get a loaner, so you give them a loaner, and 30 seems like a lot. If you, like, do people stay there during servicing? Or do, I assume if it's a quick service job, they might stay.
Some stay, because mostly it's by appointment, so some stay if it's a
Yeah.
periodic situation.
So I'm getting back to like, how much parking do you really need? Because if somebody could answer that, maybe not right this minute, but I'm just curious. And lease return, that's a separate line of business, basically leasing vehicles.
Well, yes, yeah,
Okay, so lease return just means vehicles you have on hand for people who want to take out a 3-year lease.
well, they
No,
return.
I don't know the business,
They
so.
return the cars after, and the cars get serviced, and then
Commissioner Braun, I think this now is a good time to say that, I mentioned timing earlier. I think now is a decent time to mention I reference what I'm talking about. As I understand it, Commissioner, Mr. Attorney Willinger and Mr. Went can correct me. Today, we need to finish the hearing today unless we get an extension from the applicant. And I think it's important that we do our best to go through this hearing as best we can to see if we can finish today in light of all the business that we have currently with us. So ask the questions that are pertinent. But if there are questions that really deal with more, they've answered the question about how much parking they need, or how much they want based on their business. I think diving into details may not be the best use of our time, is my point.
But I think we need the details, don't we?
I don't think we do. So, as I said, we either have to finish tonight or we need to ask an extension. So, and I'm not gonna talk to Attorney Willinger about that now. But
So,
let's go, I think we address parking as well as we can at this point.
so if we have a question and they can't answer it, they can provide that to us
Later,
at some
but
point.
again,
Okay.
asking them about how many spaces they need for leasing versus, selling or whatever they are. It
Well, I
seems-
appreciate this exhibit. It raised a host of questions, that's all. So he knows what my question is and he can choose to
Okay.
answer it later.
I'll get the.
Any other questions with parking?
One specific question.
Go ahead.
So the areas designated in green as service. Would you say that those are motor vehicles awaiting repair work or having been repaired, to be stored or parked? Is that the correct characterization of those?
Repeat that?
So the areas in green.
Yeah.
Up there,
Mhm.
it says service.
Right.
Would you say that those are vehicles awaiting repair work or having been repaired?
Yes, I would.
And how many are there?
How many spaces for the
Yeah.
service? The 50.
50, okay, thank you.
If we're good with parking. It's up to you as to what to move next, but maybe
Okay,
traffic makes sense since we were talking about it, so.
All right, I could go to traffic, or we could address the other question, which is the last one on my list, which is the lighting and the burden.
Let's do the lighting, finish that off. And then- Thank
Good evening, I'm Robert Walker, I'm a civil engineer. So it's kind of just to pick up on, I know we discussed this at length last hearing, so I won't go through all the nitty gritty again. But there were a couple questions specifically on the lighting as it's getting to the public access. So to be clear, there is the 6-foot fence right along the edge of the public access. And at that height, it's an opaque fence. None of the lighting is projecting beyond that. So within the public access itself, directly adjacent to the water, there's 0 foot candles as shown by our model. I know this is tiny little text. We have to put them every 10 feet, so we're stuck with that. As far as lighting in general, I think it's important to note that, you know, this isn't lit up like a football stadium or anything. We're looking directly underneath these lights at approximately 10 to 14 foot candles if you're standing right under it. For reference, the average supermarket is designed to be 75 foot candles. You know, like a normal retail store is usually around 50. And this is more in line with like a fine dining restaurant where it's turned way down. And that's if you're directly under it. Once you get kind of closer to this fence line, we're looking more in the 1 to 2 range.
This is dark sky compliant, as you said.
This is dark sky compliant, yeah, it has the fixture shielding on the side, and I know we discussed that, so.
Go ahead.
Pretty quick. We got a couple letters in which you might not have seen yet, from Fairfield Sustainability Task Force and I think one from Mill River Wetlands. They both suggested, I think, that you have the lighting for the inventory. I think they're pretty tall on that end, but you have the lighting for the inventory be on a like motion detector.
Timer
Because,
or a motion detector?
pardon me?
It's a timer or a motion detector?
Yeah, so that it would be off during the night hours, I don't know, 11 PM to 6 AM, something like that. And then they pointed out that supposedly that is safer because it's sort of like an alarm. If somebody goes in there, it turns on, and that is actually better for your inventory protection. Could you address that?
Yeah, and so I believe Mr. Capasso actually talked about this in the last hearing a little bit. They do have the lights set on a timer so they dim at night, just keeping enough so the security cameras can see all the cars.
So they won't be on at night, or?
They'll be dimmed. They won't, I don't believe they go completely off, but they're at a much lower light output.
And you're talking about in the commercial end, not in the open space end, the public space?
Brian may be able to correct me, but I believe it's the whole site.
Cause you have inventory like,
Yeah.
sort of near the open space,
Yeah.
near the public access, so.
And Brian just gave me the nod. It is over all of the outside lighting, the dim on those timers at night.
And the foot candles would, so the normal foot candles at night would be 10 to 14, or would it be lower than that?
So 10 to 14 is with them fully on, and that's again if you're standing directly under a light. I don't have the numbers exactly how much they dim. You know, it's not a setting you can really figure out until you kind
You
of
wouldn't
set.
change it for inventory versus something else, it's all gonna be the same, more or
Yeah, no,
less.
they're all set up on the same system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, you wanna discuss
Yeah,
some of the?
So last of the questions before we get into the next part of the presentation. We have Anthony Zemba from Land Tech, and we've asked him to comment because there were a number of letters that came in about the birds to get injured with building. And we'd like Anthony to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, yep, I'm Anthony Zemba, I'm a senior ecologist with Land Tech, my office in Westport. I have about 30 years' experience in the business, and I also work as an adjunct professor at University of New Haven, specializing in environmental impact assessment. I have a background in ornithology, served as director of conservation for Connecticut Audubon Society for a couple of years, and president of Hartford Audubon Society. And I happen to just be a birder myself. It's been a hobby of mine since I was 10 years old. So long and short of it, from the artist renderings that I've seen, this building is not the worst that I've seen for bird strikes. Probably one of the worst buildings I've seen is Evans Hall on the Yale campus. It's a completely glass building on the lower floor, and you can see right through the whole building. They prided themselves in having that transparency. They have a planted courtyard in the middle with trees and shrubs and things like that, so the birds flying towards the building see sheer glass with a planted courtyard, thinking they can fly right to it. So even with that said, that building is a subject of a study right now to figure out which side of the building is the worst, where do most of the window strikes occur, et cetera. But there's a lot about this building that I noticed right off the bat, that does not have those characteristics. What does that mean?
That's the
She's got the rendering up.
rendering is up.
Oh, thank you. Right above it, okay. So we don't have a planted courtyard in the middle. We don't have windows on all sides. The windows that you do see there, thank you, Pete. I believe are on the north side of the building. Not the south side where we have the natural area, the wetlands and the river.
Orient us, which are we looking, what direction are we looking right now? I know this is a general rendering, but
Yeah,
This is the north end of the building.
north end of the building, south is that way, so we're kind of looking a little skewed.
so I'm sorry, the north end is by the railroad tracks?
No,
The north, the railroad tracks is to the east, to the west. This is,
Tracks are west.
yeah,
At this view, you're standing in the eastern driveway.
So we're looking at the notch right
it's toward, yeah, train tracks, downtown Fairfield.
Yeah.
The,
Thank you.
Martel Bistro and
Yeah.
and the wetlands. And then lastly, another positive feature about this design, if you notice, there are no landscape plantings right up against the building. That could be another draw or destination for the birds to fly to. And the windows are a bit recessed here, which is one of the window strike mitigation techniques, is to have awnings or to have shadow cast over a portion of the window.
Thank you. Mr. Braun, go ahead,
And the
sorry.
windows, so we're mostly looking at the windows on the front, and I think you said last time there are no windows facing the river, but there are some windows on other parts. They look kind of small though, right?
They're tiny.
Would you recommend they use that special kind of glass that has like stippling in it or whatever, or does it not matter with those windows because they're just not big enough?
Yeah, when you have a full floor dedicated to glass, that's when you start to worry about that.
What's that called, the special kind of glass they use to prevent bird strikes? There's a name for it, I
There's
forget.
special types of glass,
Yeah.
there's treatments that can,
Okay,
yeah, things like that.
would you recommend it here?
Well, I wouldn't recommend any kind of treatment unless you had data to prove that, it's an issue. A lot of our university buildings on campus have glass too. As a matter of fact, I have a couple students that had just started their research on the Bergami Science Center. We have glass all around the building on a certain floor, but the birds seem to be striking on the south side of the building for some reason. So that we're just starting to look into that right now. So to retrofit the whole building all around with window treatment may not be justified. The jury's still out on that right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I'd like to talk a little bit about the operations, because it's important in reference to a major issue of yours deciding this application, which is, will there be any adverse impacts due to our operations? In my opinion, and based on 24 years of Penske's operations in Fairfield, there's not going to be any adverse impact, but there's a positive impact in any event. Let's talk about the impact first on the town. I can tell you the properties that Portia will be vacating at 450 Schofield Avenue and at Commerce Drive will remain in the Penske Group stable of properties. So you're not going to be losing any business opportunities or tax revenues or that type of thing from those buildings. 450 Schofield is the service center. 475 Commerce is the showroom. The 450 Schofield will be, the plans are now that they'll be expanded for the service of Audi and Mercedes-Benz. And 475 Commerce, that property will be utilized most probably by Audi. It hasn't been 100% solidified which one, but I believe it's going to be Audi. Now, and talking about taxes, you should know that the Penske Group pays $105,000 a month to the city, to the town of Fairfield under the current operations, $105,000 a month. With this new building, the estimate is that the cost of this new building, between the site work, the actual building, the tenant fit up, the equipment, will be in excess of 20 million and will generate total taxes of north of $500,000 a year. So there's substantial tax revenue, which is without, by the way, any or very little set off for town services, as opposed to residential. There's very little set off, so most of that revenue goes right to the coffers of the town. And that's obviously not only a benefit to the town, but it also helps us with compliance with the master plan when we get into that discussion. Now, as far as operations, they said before, we have 35 employees now. 8 of them are Fairfield residents. Within 5 years, we'll have between 40 and 45,000 employees, we hope, in that range. In terms of hours of operation, the showroom will be open Mondays through Thursdays under current plans from 9 to 8, Friday and Saturday 9 to 6. The current plans for the service center is to be open Mondays through Fridays, 7:30 to 6, and Saturdays 8 to 4. Now, by the way, in reference to the service department, all general repairs and warranty work is done indoors. The repair doors will be closed, or all doors will be closed. You'll not hear any noise emanating from the property in general, off the property. Also, you should know that there's no body work that is going to be done at this particular facility. Okay, so turning to the volume of business. The volume of business generated on any commercial property has a direct effect on land use issues, including traffic, noise, pollution, inconvenience to neighbors, and so forth. And I don't know how much of this we got into answering questions last week. There's so many questions I don't remember if I answered them or not. But the Porsche dealership is not a big traffic generator in terms of volumes of business, unlike Honda, Toyota, Ford, and so forth. It's more akin to the Ferraris and the Rolls Royces and the Bentleys. As evidence of that, there are only 5 Porsche dealerships in the whole state of Connecticut, only 199 Porsche dealerships in the whole United States. Brian Beedlin, who is the Penske Corporation New York and Connecticut area vice president, has given me hard statistics for the year 2023 on their operation. And I think we went into this last time, but just very quickly, there's 7, on an average, 7 sales visits per day into this facility. That's for new and used cars. 7 potential customers come in a day. In 5 years, we estimate that'll grow to 10. In terms of service visits, there are 14 service visits per day on average. 14. By 5 years, we anticipate 20. 95% of those service visits are by appointment. So that when we talked about the middle entrance to this facility, holding 8 cars inside and 10 outside before you even approach the post road, that's 18, which is more than we do a day, and they're never 18 at the same time, because it's by appointment only. So there's no issue on any impact on post road due to that middle service entrance. Now, in addition to the cars, there are 6 tractor trailer trucks that will deliver inventory to the site, 6 a month. That's 1.5 a week. And you saw the truck turning map last time, I think, where they come in. They come in from a west to east route because they can't get underneath the turnpike if they're on the downtown exit, so they have to be going west to east. They take a left into the site, drop off the inventory in the back and come out. That one, as we said, that one exit only right turn back onto the post road. And just to clarify one other thing on that, even though there are 3 parking spaces that for 3 additional that you could drive into this, the last exit, there's a gate, so no one can get past the gate. So there'll just be 3 cars that come in, take a quick right into these spaces right here. Other than that, all the traffic, the truck traffic, any traffic is right turn only. So that's the situation. Oh, and besides that, there is one single trailer, which is a enclosed trailer for particularly valuable inventory, and that comes 4 times a month or once a week. So you can see by these statistics that this is a very low volume traffic generator. I would say, as a matter of fact, that it's probably lower in terms of traffic impact than any commercial, retail, office or multifamily use of this project. That's one of the real advantages, my way of thinking. In that regard, I have also, I'd like to point out to the commission on my tab K. I don't know if you while you're doing this, but you also have it on your video. Tab K are the permitted uses in the light industrial zone. When they say permitted uses, that means as of right uses, no special exception needed. And on this site, you can have manufacturing, research laboratories, building contract yards, trucking businesses. And I don't know if I told you last time, but the owners have advised us that they had a offer from a bus company to utilize this site. And that's as of right. You can have storage yards, restaurants, veterinary hospitals, parking, commercial parking lots. You could have indoor recreational facilities, dog care. All those uses would generate more traffic than portion. By special exception, of course, you could have our use. And that's in the design industrial. The design commercial, which is tab L, permitted uses, again, as of right, business and professional offices, financial institutions, medical and dental clinics, hotels, motels, retail stores, undertaker establishments. That may be the one that has less parking than us, undertaker, but veterinary hospitals, drive-through restaurants, the owners, again, I don't know if I said this last time, the owners that also advised us, they had a national company that wanted to put 3 different drive-through restaurants. They go in groups of 3s with drive-throughs on this site. And again, those uses are all more traffic intensive. You could also have in a design commercial, by the way, manufacturing facilities as of right, commercial parking lots. And then by special exception, membership clubs and day nurseries and so forth. All of these, with that one exception, I think, is generate much more traffic. And I think that's a real big reason why residential neighbors to our south actually are not in opposition and have given us support for this application. Now, I'd like to, at this point, introduce our traffic expert, Corey. Before he gets up, I do want to point out one thing. I was here when there was a debate with this commission on the hillside daycare facility. And you were talking about the difference between using the statistics from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, versus actual counts from a particular use. Well, in this case, it really worked to our disadvantage. We could have taken the actual traffic that I described and taken actual counts in our existing facilities. And that would be much lower than the ITE. The ITE, as Corey will tell you, uses just generic dealerships. That includes the Hondas, the Toyotas that have 5 times the traffic that we do. And he still found out that has concluded there's no traffic congestion issues and the levels of service are very favorable. So with that, it's all yours.
More to say? Seems like he put your points right there.
I was gonna say I rest my case. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Corey Chase, Senior Principal with Dynamic Traffic, licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. Been working with Pete in his office on the site, the overall site layout plan, which is sheet C 1.0, which is on the easel before you this evening. Also authored the traffic impact study that was previously submitted to the town, as well as the addendum that was also previously submitted to the town. So just to recap quickly, this was touched on by Pete in his testimony, but just to refresh everyone's mind. We do have 3 access points along Post Road. The easternmost driveway is a full access driveway, so you can make left turns into and out of, as well as right turns into and out of that access point. That easternmost driveway will serve the employee traffic, as well as the sales traffic, customers that are oriented to the facility. As Chuck also just mentioned, it will also provide the left turn egress movement for the delivery truck entering the facility. So that truck would enter along Post Road, heading in eastbound direction, make a left turn into the subject facility, circulate to the rear of the building to unload. Again, one of the advantages of this facility, which has been highlighted, I know numerous times, is that all delivery unloading activities will occur on site. A lot of times with these car dealership facilities, you'll routinely see car carriers parked on the side of the road, parked in the 2-way center left turn lane, parked in other obscure places to unload their cars. All those activities will occur solely on site. Central access point, it's service access only, so it's an ingress only driveway, only entering movements will be made there, and again, only for vehicles accessing the service portion of the facility. As was mentioned, there is a check-in area internal to the building that can accommodate 8 cars in queue as they're being checked in for service. As Chuck just mentioned, the majority of those service appointments are by appointment only, so the dealership is well aware when those customers are going to be coming. Certainly, we think that having 8 vehicles being queued within the building provides more than ample vehicle storage area to accommodate that demand. But it is noted that you could accommodate an additional 10 vehicles external to the building before you would ever get to Post Road. We don't ever see a scenario where there'd be vehicles stacked outside of the building waiting to get into that service area. Obviously, Porsche being a boutique dealership, they want to ensure that customer service is of the highest priority. So their customers stacking outside that building, waiting to just get into the service area isn't going to bode well for them. So they're going to schedule appointments accordingly, so those vehicles can all be checked in internal to the facility. The westernmost access point, it's, as was just mentioned, it's a gated access point. So from to the north of the public parking places, which there are 5 of those located to the south of the gate. To the north of that, it's gated access. So it's only going to be used for the truck exiting the facility. At all other times, it will remain gated. When that delivery vehicle approaches the gate, it'll activate, it'll open. That's the only time it's going to be used. So you're talking about vehicles egressing the site from that driveway 1 to 2 times per week when those delivery activities occur. The only other activity at that westernmost driveway will be through the public parking spaces associated with the public open space. There has been significant ongoing consultations with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. As everyone's well aware, there is the road diet project that's going along Post Road. It's going to continue along our frontage. It's actually evolved several times since our initial discussions with the department. And it's important to note too that they have had some feedback on our access points along Post Road. Originally, when Pete's office submitted the plan, the eastern driveway was shifted a little bit further east. Through consultations with the Department of Transportation, they asked that that curb cut be centrally located between the intersections with Fairfield Place and Lindbergh Street, so that they felt it provided a better offset between the 2 intersections by locating that centrally between those 2 existing street intersections. One additional benefit through these consultations is that originally in a westbound direction, there was gonna be a dedicated left turn lane along Post Road, along the entire frontage. Through consultations with the state DOT, they're actually extending the two-way center left turn lane along Post Road. Originally, they had extended it to Fairfield Place, and now they're actually extending it west beyond Fairfield Place to approximately the midpoint between Fairfield Place and Sasko Hill Road. So it's important to note that any left turn maneuvers into the central, the service driveway, which again is ingress only, or the eastern driveway, which provides employee and customer sales access, those left turns will be accommodated through a two-way center left turn lane, so they won't impede any traffic that's traveling along the eastbound direction.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat what you just said about the center left turn lane?
Certainly. So originally, as part of the state's original plan, the two-way center left turn lane was gonna stop at Lindbergh Street. Through consultation with Mr. Romano's office and their ongoing review of this application, they're actually going to extend the two-way center left turn lane as part of the road diet project to the west. So they're gonna extend it beyond Fairfield Place to approximately the midpoint between Fairfield Place and Sasko Hill Road. So the two-way center left turn lane will encompass the easternmost driveway. It'll also encompass the central driveway. And then once you get to the west of the central driveway, it'll become a dedicated left turn lane for the signalized intersection at Sasko Hill Road. So any left turn movements into that central or eastern driveway will be accommodated through that two-way center left turn lane. Certainly has a benefit to vehicles accessing the site, but also vehicles continuing eastbound along Post Road.
The designated left turn would be for cars going west on the Post Road?
The designated left turn at the signalized intersection, that's correct. So it'd be any vehicle that's turning left on the Sasko Hill Road from Post Road would be in that dedicated left turn lane, which again terminates approximately, I would say approximately 100 feet to the east of the centralized service access point.
Is that in a set of plans you submitted? Cause we got some plans recently. So that the latest set of plans have what?
They do.
I'm sorry, Jim went for the latest road diet plan that we submitted reflect the extended opposing left-hand turn lanes.
So those are the most accurate ones?
As far as I understand it, yes.
Okay.
We got a copy of those, so
We did.
That's been submitted to you.
do we have that in this record here?
Yes.
Oh. The road diet? I don't remember getting it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was several, I think it was 8 sheets in total. It basically shows the entire improvement. We focused on SPM -03. That's the one that shows our frontage.
That's the road diet?
It is.
Oh, I don't remember seeing it. So we have that posted on this application on the website? Okay.
On you, the supplemental letter.
It's not on ours. We got it from the town.
I'll make sure that it is, but we submitted it to you separately.
Oh, it's not in this application.
Most recent one?
It was submitted in follow-up to a recent amendment to the traffic report to reflect the change in the road diet plan.
Oh.
But we'll make sure it's posted as an exhibit to the extent that it's not now.
So again, as I mentioned, we prepared a detailed traffic impact study to conduct a pre-post development analysis on an adjacent roadway network to determine if there'd be any detrimental impacts as a result of the development of the Porsche dealership. As Chuck mentioned, it's very unique in that we have an existing sales and service facility that's well established in the town of Fairfield that we can draw traffic information from. It's not typical. Usually, and I sat through the testimony that was provided on the prior application associated with the daycare and the discussions relative to the data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers versus local data. It's very beneficial on our end that we have that existing facility to draw traffic data from. As Chuck mentioned, there are currently the current facilities have a total of 35 employees with an average of 21 customer visits per day. So that's a day in totality. So 21 customer visits over a period of their projections over a 5-year period are to grow to 45 employees and 30 customer visits per day. We've conservatively assumed 33 customer visits in our report. We did compare that to data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for automobile sales facility in the 11th edition of the Trip Generation Manual. It's the current edition. As Chuck had correctly noted, they don't differentiate between types of dealerships. And the majority of the dealerships surveyed are general dealerships, whether it's Toyota, Honda, Chevrolet, things of that nature. those obviously have a much higher sales and service traffic generation associated with it. So if you look on page 9, on table 4 of our report, the ITE projects the traffic generation for automobile sales facilities based on square footage. So we ran the numbers associated with the 49,100 square foot facility. Those are summarized on table 4.
Can somebody post that? Cause and we're looking at the revised report or the original traffic report?
That's in the original.
Put it on the screen so we could look at it.
It's on page 9.
It's on the original report or?
It's on page 9.
You have the original up though, don't you, Commissioner Braun?
Hold on, I'm coming.
Not you, sorry. Ms. Harrigan, I was asking Commissioner Braun.
So that it generates substantially more traffic than what we're projecting. In order to be extremely conservative in our traffic analysis, we utilize those ITE numbers, which are dramatically higher than what this sales facility is gonna generate if it's approved by the town. And again, that was to just really provide a very conservative analysis to the town, showing that even if you look at a standard automobile dealership, not considering the fact that this is a very boutique dealership with very limited trip generation, that the traffic impacts on the adjacent roadway network be very limited in nature. So
Page 9 table?
it's on page 9, which in the PDF may actually be page 10.
69
What's the date of the report? The September 6th one or
July 8th.
is that part of the master package?
69 of 296.
I'm in the regular traffic report. Keep going.
Page of the master check.
The master
69.
package?
I'm saying page 69 of the master. Okay.
And as traffic engineers, the commission's heard extensive testimony as far as we obviously focus on peak hour impacts. We focus on the weekday morning, the weekday evening, and again, the Saturday midday. Given that it's an automobile sales facility, there's a certain associated demand during the Saturday midday period as well. So we focus on those 3 peak hours to conduct our pre and post development analysis to determine if there be any resulting traffic impacts upon the redevelopment of the subject property. And again, as I mentioned, we utilize these very conservative IT numbers to conduct that analysis to determine if it can show that there are no detrimental impacts with traffic generating. Thank you for pulling that up. So these are the numbers that I'm referring to.
Ms. Harrigan.
And again, it's page 9, table 4 on page 9 of our July 8th, 2024 traffic impact study. Those summarize the ITE generated peak hour volumes for a automobile dealership of this size. Well beyond those numbers that you've heard from an employee and sales count that I just described. And if you could just scroll to the next page, page 10, please, on table 5, we summarize the daily, and this is total anticipated trips for the day for the Porsche facility generated by the existing numbers as far as employees and customer counts go, as well as that 5-year projection. So currently, we're looking at 70 employee trips. Again, it's 35 employees, assuming 1 in and 1 out each per day. 21 customer trips, 1 in and 1 out, you get your 42 for 112 total trips per day. Those numbers increase over that 5-year period to 156. You look again, looking at those total daily trips in comparison to just the peak hour trips associated with the ITE. The PM and the Saturday ITE trips are comparable or even beyond those daily trips that would be generated by this facility. So the numbers that we utilize in our analysis are again very conservative in nature, and we just wanted to demonstrate that even with those very conservative numbers, that there would still be no detrimental impacts.
So just a clarifying question. So
Sure.
you use the ITE numbers rather than the assumed numbers from your other operation, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And again, it was because they're so much higher, we wanted to provide a conservative analysis. So sticking with page 10, that's where you find our pre and post development analysis of the adjacent intersections. So we looked at Post Road, Sasko Hill Road, Post Road and Fairfield Place, Post Road and Limburg Street, and then our 3 site access points along Post Road. We run what we term the no build, which is the future traffic condition without the development, and then the build, we surcharge the additional traffic associated with the IT projections on to the intersections, compare them, and see if there are any resulting degradations in level of service. As you can see, the signalized intersection of Post Road and Sasko Hill Road no changes in the resulting level of service from the pre and post development conditions. Similarly, the unsignalized intersections with Post Road and Fairfield Place, Post Road and Lindbergh Street, again, no resulting level of service impacts as a result of the development. We also took a look at the site access points and found that they were going to operate at acceptable levels of service. This is without the consideration of the two-way center left turn lane. So we did provide a supplement on October 1st, 2024, which again, I know Commissioner Randolph mentioned at, I believe, the last hearing, possibly the hearing before that, why wasn't the Post Road road data included in our original traffic impact study? That was because we were having ongoing discussions with the DOT at that time, and it wasn't defined where those limits of that two-way center left turn lane were going to land. Since we've had the benefit of additional time to discuss this with the DOT, they were able to produce that updated plan, which did clearly define where that two-way center left turn lane was going to terminate. So that led to us producing the October 1st updated technical memorandum, which was really just a supplement of that analysis. The data that went into that did not change. All that changed was the level of service analyses as a result of the addition of that two-way center left turn lane. It actually improved the operational conditions of the site driveways. Just now that you're taking that road down from 2 lanes to 1 lane in each direction with consideration of the two-way center left turn lane. So
I have the graphic up if you want to read it.
yeah, that's great. So this is the plan that was provided by the Department of Transportation, their current configuration of the Post Road data along our frontage. As you can see, the two-way center left turn lane extends beyond its intersections with Lindbergh Street to the west of Fairfield Place, terminates at approximately the midpoint between Fairfield Place and Sasko Hill Road, where it becomes a dedicated left turn lane in the westbound direction to serve the signalized intersection at Sasko Hill Road.
Can you show on there where the entrance for the service would be, more or less? Is it between?
Yeah, so that right where the cursor is right now, you can see it's approximately the midpoint between Sasko Hill Road and Fairfield Place.
And again, is that one way in or?
It's one way in only.
And where do they?
So vehicles will go in a northbound direction away from Post Road. They're going to be checked in this area. The employee or the customer will vacate the vehicle at that point, and they'll either enter the facility. If it's a minor scheduled service appointment, a lot of times, as you heard the architect speak, they did care to have overlooking areas of the service space. Some people may want to watch their cars be serviced. They may wait for minor service. If it's a more major service, as you heard, we do have loaner vehicles available, courtesy cars. They'll take a courtesy car and they'll exit the facility through the easternmost driveway. So all exiting, whether it's service customers, sales customers, or employees, all occur at that easternmost
Why
driveway.
wouldn't it be done on the west portion?
This is gated at all times, except for the exiting movement of the truck.
Oh, nobody
So
can use it.
Nobody can use
Not even
that,
employees?
not even employees.
Okay.
So this is gonna be gated at all times, except for when the truck exits that facility.
And why is that being gated?
It's to control access to and from the facility.
Security.
With the inventory that's there, with the customer cars that may be parked
Oh, I
waiting to be
see.
serviced,
Okay.
they want this to be very secure. So
Okay.
with all of your sales customers entering the facility, they have direct line of sight from the sales area with the glass windows on the corner of the facility. So direct line of sight that keeps all the activity really to the east of the building in an area where it can be monitored. They don't want customers and other vehicles driving behind the facility to the north and then trying to exit through that westernmost driveway.
So if you're a service customer, you have to go in the center entrance, even if you're gonna end up parking in the green areas over here?
So they don't park there, and I'd be happy to clarify. So I know there was some discussion, and I'm referring to the parking planogram, which was previously discussed. It's the colorized version of the proposed parking scheme on the site plan. So I know there was some discussion as to, service vehicles and things of that nature. As far as the number of spaces we have for service relative to the number of service bays, relative to the number of service techs, those service spaces are for vehicles that are either, as we discussed earlier, awaiting a part. Parts are being shipped from Germany. They don't have anything in stock. They can't get something from an area dealership. It's got to come from Germany. So that vehicle may sit there a week, 2 weeks. We wanna make sure that there are dedicated spaces for those vehicles. It could also be for a vehicle that was serviced, the customer chose not to wait. The service tech would then drive the vehicle into one of those spaces where they wait. When that customer arrives to pick up the vehicle, somebody from the dealership will walk out to the parking area, get that vehicle, drive it back around for the customer, and it'll be dropped off in the customer sales area. At that point, they'll exit the facility through the easternmost driveway.
So if a customer comes and there's not room for them to wait and they got there early, then they would just park it on their own over there?
They won't. There's no one's gonna be, they all have to be checked in. They all have to go through the service entrance. They all have to be checked in this internal area, which, as I mentioned, can accommodate 8 vehicles. Given that we're
And
talking
10 on the outside?
and 10 on the
In
outside.
that little entryway there?
That's correct, cause it's, again, it's one way in a northbound direction only. And we're only talking about 14 service visits a day. So being able to accommodate 8 vehicles within the building at any one time, we don't ever anticipate a situation where there are even vehicles external to the building. Porsche really wants all those activities to occur internal to the building. So through their scheduling ability, they're gonna do whatever they can to make sure that happens and that you don't have 14 people all show up at 9 o'clock to drop their car off. It's just not efficient for the customer. It's not efficient for the dealership as well. So all the spaces, to the rear, and I'll call it to the northwest of the subject property, no customer direct access. The only real customer direct access is gonna be on the eastern portion of the lot. The space is specifically highlighted in pink. And then any service vehicle return activities that again occur on that eastern portion of the property. There's gonna be no customer access to the rear of the facility or to those green spaces. Those are not self-park spaces for service vehicles. It's only for technicians or employees of the dealership to utilize to move vehicles around as needed. I know there was some discussion too relative to the number of service bays versus the number of service techs. That again is also for efficiency purposes. If you get a car up on a service list, you take it apart, you find out what's wrong with it, you find out that you can't get the part, you don't really wanna put that car back together to then take it down off the lift to then move it back out in the service parking area. So they have the ability with the additional service bays, even though it's substantially more than the number of service techs that we have, to leave that car on the lift until the part arrives. So it's really just from an efficiency standpoint from the overall operations of the dealership. And as I mentioned, with consideration of the two-way center left turn lane along Post Road, said access points are gonna operate at acceptable level of service C or better during each of the peak hours. Continuing to show no detrimental impact on the adjacent roadway network, no reduction in level of service in either the weekday morning, weekday evening, or Saturday midday periods. Again, that's with consideration of utilizing that extremely conservative ITE data for our traffic generation projections. We've had extensive discussions on the delivery route, where the delivery is going to occur, how it's gonna occur all on site, the travel path internal to the site. I'd be happy to recap any of that with the board, should there be any questions. Chuck, if there's anything you feel like I may have missed in my direct testimony, I'd be happy to touch on that, but answer any.
Your presentation,
I am, sir.
questions? Commissioner Randolph?
Yeah, so got some general questions and some specific questions. So there's been a couple of correspondence talking about the size of the park. If you were to eliminate that western entry point, I guess 2 things about the western entry point. One, you said there's a gate there. I've seen a couple of different permutations of the drawing. Are parking spaces accommodated in there for the park?
Parking spaces are located to
Just the 5 that are
the
below.
south. So the gate is to the north
Okay.
of those 5 parking
Yeah,
stalls.
so there are parking spaces there.
There are 5 parking spaces for the park to the south of the gate.
Okay, good. And if you were to enlarge the park and eliminate that entrance, would there be a solution? Could you come to a solution to circulate around the building?
Not from a truck delivery standpoint, no, unfortunately, sir. And really, the most efficient way to have a truck circulate the site is to have a single point of ingress and a single point of egress. If you require the truck to make a 360-degree or 180-degree turn fully within the site, you either end up with a vast amount of unnecessary pavement, which will increase the impervious coverage, to allow that truck to execute a U-turn maneuver solely on site. So in my professional opinion, the most efficient use of land, most efficient use of space as far as a site access and circulation standpoint goes, is to have that single point of ingress for the truck and single point of egress along the western frontage.
Thanks. And then just some specific questions. In your report, like on page 5, where you talk about the existing conditions, you say there's no parking on some of the side streets.
Yeah, certainly. And again, that's
Did you
should have been more specific as far as where that is relative.
to the site?
I did.
Did you visit the site?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just looked at the Google Earth and it looked like there was parking, especially for some of the restaurants. So I don't know if you're gonna update report, but that right now that seems to be inconsistent with just my observations from looking at Google Earth. And then I guess one of the things that's most concerning is right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 access points, and I'll call it Plan North. There seems to be some different variations on what's north here, but I'm looking at the plan down there. North is the top of the plan.
That's right, that's correct.
Right, so, yeah, so we've got 5 access points there, right? We've got 2 for the restaurant. And then 3 double entrance points for the proposed project, is that correct? So we get 5?
So I would characterize that a little bit differently, Commissioner. So we have, again, as I mentioned, we have 1 full access point all the way to the east. The central driveway is ingress only, so it's only accommodating ingress movements. So, I wouldn't consider that to be a full access point, given that it's in only.
So it's closed?
No,
You can
it's-
access there?
You can ingress there, but you cannot egress there. So it's only accommodating inbound movements. It's not accommodating exiting.
So you wouldn't say a curb cut's an access point? I'm just trying to get the terminology straight.
No, certainly. So I consider this to be a full access point, meaning that you can enter and exit this driveway.
Mhm.
So you can do both movements here. The central driveway, given that it's ingress only, it's ingress only. So you're only accommodating one direction of traffic.
Left-hand ingress, right?
That's correct, through the two-way center left turn lane. So no exiting movements are going to occur. So you're limiting the points of conflict there in that you're only accommodating ingress movements. The westernmost driveway, so all the way to plan left, that was originally only going to be a right turn egress only for the delivery trucks. Through consultations with the town, we obviously included those parking spaces for the park, so that modified that curb cut. But from a dealership access standpoint, it only accommodates the exiting movement from the truck, which is going to occur 1 to 2 times a week. And as you mentioned, sir, Commissioner, we do have the 2 access point for Martell's. Obviously, we don't control those. They are similar to our scheme. It's ingress only on the eastern driveway, egress only on the western portion of the driveway.
And then on the southern side, you got 3, correct? Lindbergh, Fairfield, and Sasko.
That's correct.
And so these out of these, just one of them is basically an intersection, right? In Sasko.
So that's correct. So if you're speaking of the egress point to Martell's and the signalized intersection with Sasko, that's correct. But as I did discuss previously, we did have consultations with the Department of Transportation relative to how the site access points line up with the existing intersections. And it was through their feedback that they recommended that we shift easternmost driveway to be centralized between the Lindbergh Street and Fairfield Place intersections.
So you've got somewhere between 7 and 8 access points in this one little stretch of road, correct?
We do.
Okay. And so if you're making a left out of, and I know the volume, and I appreciate your volume assumptions, and I think you're right in assuming the more conservative ITE numbers. Usually people question ITE, I don't, but you use the more conservative ones. But I agree that it's a low volume. I'm familiar with these operations. But making a left out of Fairfield Place, especially in the post road, could basically get 2 conflict points, one right and one left, correct?
So you're talking about making it somebody going northbound on Fairfield Place, making a left to go westbound on Post Road?
Yeah.
And the points of conflict?
Well, you've got a header coming from the opposite direction, right? Because you've got most of the traffic for this location will be coming westbound to eastbound, because that's where the highway is, correct?
Correct. So any left turn movements occurring for the service portion of the facility would occur to the west of Fairfield Place, so they would not be in conflict with that left turn movement. You do have vehicles, either employees or customers accessing the sales portion of the facility that would drive past Fairfield Place. But again, just given the volume of the facility, given the spacing relative to the existing street intersections, I don't see a detrimental impact on the adjacent roadway network
So
as a result of this layout.
Is there any way to, if those were in opposition to each other, you would reduce the conflict risk, would you not?
You're still gonna be talking about left turns versus left turns coming into the facility, out of the facility.
But you're just seeing one road across from you rather than looking left and having to look left and right at the same time and coming out in an unsignalized departure lane.
Understood your point, sir, but again, that was why, through discussions with the DOT that we took a look at having this being centralized between the two. So there are good lines of sight out there. The road is flat, it is straight. You do have a clear line of visibility in either direction. So you do have the ability to see those maneuvers. I think certainly with consideration of the road diet and, providing one lane in both the eastbound and westbound directions, as well as having those turning movements, specifically the
If
westbound.
somebody's coming in that main entrance on the east side and you're coming out of either,
Is it helpful to have the map up?
yeah, I can see it from here. Oh, maybe everybody else can see it.
Does that help you?
And Commissioner Randolph, I don't know if you prefer to have sheet 1.0 up or the.
Whichever, well, actually, this actually highlights some other issues, but it would seem that anybody coming out of the two public streets would potentially be in a head-on collision and a dangerous condition because it's the colloquial term of suicide lane in the middle.
We prefer two-way center left turn lane, sir.
Yeah, I know, but we're the public and you're.
Certainly. And again, it's in my professional opinion that with that clear line of sight, given the volumes associated with this facility and given the provision of that two-way center left turn lane, I think it provides a benefit to the public, and I don't see it as a detriment to any of the turning movements occurring on Fairfield Place or Lindbergh as a result of the redevelopment of the property.
And so what measures could you propose to reduce that risk? Because right now, and one of the big problems in our town is that we have too many of these offset intersections. It's chaos. It's real chaos. And this road is, the average volume isn't bad, but it peaks and it's bad. It's really bad at certain times. And this offset seems to pose a particular danger. Like what measures can you provide to reduce that risk of the two-way? What was your term?
Two-way center left turn.
Two-way center left turn lane.
Really, by installing that is one of the biggest things you can do to offset any of those risks. By providing that dedicated lane where those left turns can occur, it's going to be along the majority of the corridor. So people are going to become very familiar with its operations.
But it's not dedicated left, it's two-way, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, but having the two-way is really what causes the problem, right?
I would respectfully disagree. I think the inclusion of the two-way actually provides a benefit because it actually provides an area in which people can make a left turn maneuver outside of that travel lane.
This is a dedicated two-way.
Well,
a dedicated left, left-hand warrant lane.
The issue we tend to run into as traffic engineers in providing dedicated left turn lanes along areas like this, and that there's not enough space to establish multiple dedicated left turn lanes. So you get people that are just going to drive through them anyway. So that's really how this concept of the two-way center left turn lane was developed, and that knowing that you need to accommodate multiple curb cuts on both sides of the road, various intersecting streets, you want to be able to provide that refuge area for those movements to occur by not restricting it specifically to a dedicated movement.
Yeah, I guess I'm just ideally we would have a dedicated left turn lane, but we don't have enough space for it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think ideally we have this two-way center left turn lane because what it does, it's twofold. It accommodates the left turns that are coming off of Post Road, either to the side streets or to these private commercial driveways. It also provides the potential for someone to execute a two-stage left turn maneuver out of those streets or these private driveways in which they have the ability to turn left across either the eastbound or westbound traffic. They have the ability to refuge in the center turn lane and then merge onto whatever direct, whether they're going eastbound or westbound.
I'm sorry, I'm just intuitively, it just seems like you're sharing the center left turn lane, you're increasing the volume that's going to the left, you don't have a dedicated intersection where you can negotiate that. I'm just intuitively having a hard time understanding how that would be safer.
Because again, you're providing dedicated lanes for these maneuvers to occur. I understand your point, sir, where you're saying.
When you say dedicated, it's not, it's shared in the opposite direction, correct?
It's shared in the opposite direction, but it's dedicated outside the lane of travel, so that, and again, the studies have shown, and you know, my professional opinion, I would agree, that it's safer to have these movements to occur within lanes like this, whether it's shared or dedicated, versus having those occur from the direct lane of travel.
So switching topics a little bit, we've got a big focus on bike and pedestrian safety in this town. New focus, how you can ensure pedestrians cross, because these are, what's the width of that? The east, it looks like the east is a double and the west is a double. Actually, they're all 32 feet.
I could get my scale, sir, but we do have sidewalk along the entire frontage. And people correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these site driveways will have dedicated crosswalks across each of the driveways. So there'll be accessible ramps on either side of the driveway with a striped dedicated pedestrian area.
Right, but that's a 32 feet curb cut, right? Which is about the width of this room.
It's totally obvious, it's 30 or 30.
I can
Scroll, if you go to the site plan, it's labeled on the zoomed in view. Creating site one of these.
It's approximately 30 feet, but sir, you're correct. So having that dedicated area, any vehicle exiting the facility has their exiting maneuvers will only occur from the easternmost driveway. There is a stop sign that requires vehicles to stop in advance of that
Which is
crossing.
about the width of this room.
No.
Yeah.
No, 30 feet?
No,
30 feet's 10 steps.
it's 10 yards. This room is way wider than.
It's half the width, it's 3/4 of the width of this room. So I'm sorry, from where you're sitting over the wall. So is there any treatment you could create to make that a less challenging place to stop? To cross, because that area that's a long way. You're putting a park at one end supposedly. And it seems like it'd be a very inhospitable place to cross unless you've made an accommodation. Is there some accommodation you could make for pedestrians there?
Well, I think in providing the sidewalk along the entire site frontage as well
I'm
as.
just saying at the cut.
Yeah, so we're gonna provide a striped crosswalk, so there'll be a delineated area for those pedestrians, bicyclists to cross the driveway. Providing that it's very common for commercial access points, providing that striped dedicated area to provide that continuous crossing through the ADA ramps on either side of the driveway. Certainly I don't see, again, and this is just my professional opinion, sir, I don't see anything abnormal about having a commercial access point being that width.
I think the examples you've given us have been, and I looked at the one in Cleveland, it's next to an interstate. Showed us one in Tampa, it's next to a highway. Showed us one in Phoenix, it's at a strip center. We're trying to make a pedestrian area here, and I'm just asking you what you could do to make this a more pedestrian oriented area like you would see in an urban area, because the 3 or 4 examples you've given us have been looked at the one in Cleveland you just mentioned, and it's hard up against an interstate. So this is not hard up against an interstate. I'm just asking what accommodation you could make to make this more pedestrian, because you're putting a park, and the only way to get to that park is walking in front of hopefully these are highway type access points. I'm asking you what you could do to make that better.
And again, as I indicated, by providing the sidewalk along the entire frontage, by providing the crosswalks, that is providing that delineated pedestrian path along the entire frontage. And having a 24-foot wide to 30-foot wide curb cut, I wouldn't characterize it as a highway access point. Those are pretty typical for commercial type facilities.
You've answered my question. Let's see. What traffic calming measures might you have to slow down traffic going into there? Would you visualize any kind of different surface treatment, so cars when they're coming off 95, flying down the post road, they're late for their meeting, they turn in there. I mean, is there any sort of treatment you could put there?
I believe, and Peter will correct me if I'm wrong, but the service access point is a textured material.
You're asking about the roadway itself?
The
or
surface, yeah.
of the
My first
roadway?
question was about, if you will, the horizontal treatment, because they're bid, you're a traffic engineer, there's
But on site or on the road?
within the curb cut area, within the premises of the parcel.
Yeah, and again, we're not currently proposing any specific traffic calming measures in looking at the way that the site lays out and the location beyond activities. I didn't see any particular need for traffic calming measures being installed. Just
I'm getting that. So, what might you suggest? I mean, I guess I'm looking for a suggestion from you, right? Asking you what could be done to make it more, this is a semi-pedestrian oriented area. The building type is most commonly used next to interstates. So it's been shown. This is not, you've got a walkway that's going to a park. And unless it's easy to get to that park, people are not going to use the park at all. I've ridden my bike over there, I almost died. It's really dangerous there. And so just treating those entry points and where the pedestrians cross would be, I would hope a consideration you all made.
and again, that was why we provided the sidewalk along the entire frontage. And
I wasn't asked about the sidewalks. Yes,
I understand that, sir, but there are delineated pedestrian crossings at each one of those access points. So it provides a visual cue to any driver entering or exiting the facility that there is the potential for pedestrians to be crossing there.
You've answered my question. I think I have, let's see here. Oh yeah, so future growth on page 9 of your report. It was assumed the background growth rate was adequate to account for the traffic associated with all development not listed. Carvana, an online automotive dealer, is proposing a facility at 2269. However, it is not expected to increase traffic. Was that, and this is on page 9 of your first report. How did you come to the conclusion that Carvana shouldn't have been in your, I guess you guys call it TIA here, or TIS?
Yeah, certainly. So, because, and again, we said significantly increased traffic. So, given that the Carvana's operational parameters are that, the cars are delivered to people, there are a bunch of people coming to this facility to purchase cars, they're delivered. So we would not expect that operation of that facility to significantly change the traffic conditions. And that would have been something that would have just been factored into the background traffic. So again, between the growth rate that we included as well as the fact that we utilized the very conservative IT projections, I wouldn't anticipate any additional traffic associated with that development changing the results in this report.
How typical is it to ignore background growth in the report? Because I've never seen that before.
We didn't ignore background. We did account for background growth. What it says was that we included background growth. We didn't include any additional traffic generated specifically by the Carvana dealership because we assumed that it would be accounted for as part of the background growth.
I'm not understanding that, but I'm not a traffic engineer. So basically you're saying that Carvana, and I know your service levels were all very good on this, which is true most of the time, almost all the time, except for when it's not. But you're saying Carvana wouldn't, you assumed you call it TIA in New Jersey or TIS?
It depends on the jurisdiction, sir.
So your TIA, TIS, normally you would put background growth in there, but in this case you said that Carvana didn't contribute to it. That was your.
So we put background growth in there and we said that accounted for any potential additional traffic that would be generated by the Carvana, wouldn't exceed that background growth that we included.
And so did you look at other Carvana locations to come to that conclusion?
Having done development work for Carvana, they're extremely low volume generating facilities. And as I mentioned, they handle the vehicle deliveries. They do get some imported vehicles, but because it's all controlled by Carvana themselves, they tend to limit their peak hour activities just because it's inefficient for them to be delivering cars or receiving cars, when roadways are at maximum.
So did you do a study for it?
We didn't, but again, it wouldn't change the conclusions of my report. If we did, account for any additional traffic generated by the Carvana because it would just be supplemental background traffic.
Right, but I'm just asking, I'm sorry, just trying to clarify. So you assume the background growth was adequate, but we added a Carvana and we didn't have a study on what Carvana would generate. So you, just based upon your personal experience, did the calculations?
Based on my professional experience, it was my opinion that the additional background traffic added as a result of the growth rate was sufficient to accommodate any potential additional traffic generated by the Carvana.
But it wasn't in your calculation.
We did not specifically break out calculations for the Carvana now.
That's what I was trying to figure out. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Braun.
I have a question about page 9 also, which is page 69 and 70 of your original traffic report. I'm trying to figure out trip generation. Okay, so table 4 and table 5, they kind of relate to each other, right? Table 4 shows ITE trip generation for a 49,000 square foot Porsche dealership. This is on page 69 of the master package. Page
Yeah, that's correct.
9 of your report, okay. So like, for example, in the morning on a weekday, that's for a dealership, that's not also for a service facility, that's just for a dealership.
That's sales and service.
It says dealership, it doesn't say service, but.
Well, traditionally, the dealerships studied by the ITE had both sales and service offerings.
So that would be somewhere in a footnote on the ITE, so.
It would be, but and again, we just use that because it was conservative.
Okay.
Multiple times what this dealerships actually.
Okay, so that's showing in the morning, 91 trips in and out to a dealership. And you're comparing that, so that's kind of like, you don't have to look at the existing, there's no existing, so that's increased from 0, basically.
We increased from 0.
Okay, so 0 now, 91 in and out in the morning, and then in the afternoon, 110 in and out, and then on a Saturday, 325 in and out. I assume Saturday is a shorter day, but I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. Okay, morning, 163, afternoon, the same. And then that's table 4, then table 5, it shows data on the first line for your existing service and sales facilities on Schofield and Commerce Drive.
Correct.
Okay, and that shows a total of 112 trips per day, but that's not Saturday, that would be every day but Saturday?
That is every day. So not necessarily Saturday as well. Saturday is typically slightly lower volume for service activities. There may be some increase in sales, but this represents what the maximum daily would be.
And that's your current sales and service facilities on those 2 locations. Your proposed, are those numbers taken from table 4 then?
They're not. They're from the paragraph above and the testimony that Mr. Willinger just provided, indicating that over a 5-year period, there's the potential to increase the existing employees to 40 or 45. And there's also the potential to increase the existing sales and service volume.
Okay, which shows employee trips 70, that's in and out, right?
Correct.
So that'd be 35, right, not 45.
So yeah, so the 90 would be 45.
Okay, and then customer trips, at your current facility, on an average day would be 42 trips in and out.
That's 42 trips total. So as Mr. Willinger indicated, there were currently 7 sales visits, 14 service visits for a total of 21. So doubling the 21 to 42.
You're doubling it for in and out. Right?
Correct.
And how, I don't know if we've gotten this information yet, but what is the capacity of the current service facility, like in phase and detailing and things like that? Like, does it do the same amount of business? Is this bigger than that?
I don't know, Commissioner. We have to for you.
I'll get you that.
If you could, you don't have, yeah, if you could get that, that'd be great. So we have 23 bays, but you're only gonna use probably 10 at a time, but then we have 5 detail bays, which I don't know if there's a limit on that. But how does that compare to what you currently have at the other facility?
Well, they do have detailed projections for the number of employees, so that would directly correspond to the questions that you're asking. I've already projected the fact that they may go from 35 to potentially 45 in a 5-year period. So they, based on their existing volume, their existing demand, they know how many employees they're gonna put in this facility.
Right, I just wanted to compare what the capacity was. What
Yeah, I don't
the
know
number of bays-
specifically as far as number of service bays goes, but
Mhm.
again, you've heard testimony that a lot of that's dictated by the manufacturer, that they have to have this amount of service bays.
So maybe they have the same amount now, but it'd be good to know. And also, do we know how many parking spaces are at the current facilities? Not for right this minute, but if you could get that, that'd be great.
Put that on the list.
Okay, thanks.
Also with traffic.
Thanks, everyone.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I guess we'll get into the environmental issue.
Our last issue, I think.
Pardon?
Should be our last issue.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna be talking about the environmental issue. And we're gonna be talking about Mr. Stanky's letters, and
Landscaping.
bulkhead, a little bit about the bulkhead as well, not too much about the bulkhead. And then we're gonna go into the final phase, which is touching on the legal issues of the application. So,
One of these things as well, you said you wanted to touch on some environmental stuff in your rebuttal, so.
well, I'm not gonna do, remember you suggested we do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can certainly give us a taste of what it is, so we kind of know what it is when Mr. Stanky's doing his presentation, if he decides to. But, you know, I wouldn't mind getting to public comment either, so let's not get.
Right, so to the extent that public adds more information, then we'll reserve some
That's,
time.
of course.
So let me start on the environmental, I guess really the end point of the environmental as I discussed originally, way back at the first hearing, was my tab H, which was the February 5 of 2020 DEP certificate of completion. And that's the document that said the remediation was finished, completed, and they released Exide from financial assurance and liability requirements.
Mr. Willinger, which tab is that?
H.
Thank you.
That's the actual completion of cleanup activities of February 5 of 2020.
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, so I think the dates are important. That was last official document saying there was no mediation. And by the way, I have this Copley, our environmental expert here, to answer any questions. So that's the end point, but I'd like to start chronologically with Mr. Stanky's. Mr. Stanky submitted two things, I understand. One was a letter originally and back in August, and then recently he submitted his memorandum that he sent to the DEP and various Exide parties. You have that. Okay. And in the June 19 of 2013 memorandum, basically what Mr. Stanky was saying is that he was responding to the sediment wrap that was proposed. And he said that, wait a minute, in addition to what you propose on your wrap, I have concerns about the two drains, the railroad right-of-way drain and the state stormwater drain under the post road. And he talked about his concerns. There may be contamination within each drain. There may be contamination in the soil near the drain. Speculation, obviously, and so he issued this memorandum. The next thing, Rob, I'm gonna be giving you two or three, Rob will pass out and then exhibit 2 or 3 different letters chronologically. That was 2013. Bob will, in a moment, show you a letter from the DEP in June of 2015, 2 years after. And he'll also there's a May 30, 19 and a November 2019. So I want to do one at a time, and I'll do this as quickly as I can, and if you have questions, I'll slow down. So on the 20, okay, so on the June 4/15 letter, it was a letter from the DEEP to Exide. And it said that they reviewed and approved the report entitled, it's a supplemental wrap. It was originally September 13, and it's now revised to March of 15. It's a sub wrap. And it said that the DEP is saying that the documents in that wrap documented the removal of all remaining subsurface piping. That's in quote, all remaining subsurface piping from the plant operations to their endpoints, and it approved also the excavation and offsite transportation of lead and petroleum hydrocarbon impacted soil from 6 different outstanding issue areas, and they approved that sub in this particular document. Now, the next thing, before I get to the ones that you already have on Exhibit I hate to jump around like this, but on Exhibit I that you have in my original package, is a May 20. This was June of 15. Then I second letter in I, 2 letters in I, is the third letter actually is in October 11/17. Now this is 2 more years gone by. And the DEP issued another report on October 11th on the sediment removal action report. And it said that the final sediment, this is on the second paragraph, I don't think I highlighted it, but the second paragraph of that October 11th, 17 says that the last sentence, the final sediment verification results demonstrated that the removal of lead contaminated sediment had been successfully completed, with the results meeting the cleanup criteria established for the project. Then in March of 19, another year and a half or so.
Mr. Willinger, just with regard to that last sentence, it says for the study areas J through V. The sentence below, could you clarify where that might be?
No, I don't specifically know, but Chris, if you make a note of that, study areas A through V. If we
J, it's either an I or
an I or a
J.
J.
Thank you.
Okay. Then the next letter, a year and a half later, is March of 19. So the remediation, the soils are removed. March of 19 talks about the groundwater monitoring. And they said that there is no, again, on the third paragraph, no further groundwater monitoring is required. So that was after the excavation of the soil and the sediment from Mill River. They had another 2 years worth of monitoring, and they said that's enough monitoring. That's that March of 19. And then the next thing would be the HRP letter that you have in your, that I just, Rob just gave you. Now that HRP is a highly regarded environmental firm. This report to the remediation division of the DEP. And what it wanted to do was confirm that the respondents successfully completed all the tasks required by the consent board. What's germane about this report is they give you some background information, which I think is too much. Now,
What is that? I'm sorry.
When we just handed.
that's the one you just got, the HRP. And they gave you background and a summary of activities, but on page 3 of that report, the last paragraph. It says accordingly, based on the confirmation data collected during the upland soil and the river sediment removal action, remedial actions, which is the removal, and the recent completion of the groundwater monitoring, the site has achieved compliance with the residential standards of the RSRs. RSRs is remediation standards regulations. So this is the first time that we actually have wording that it's clean to a residential standard. Now, the last of those three documents that Rob handed is a November of 2019 UEEP statement that they put out and released to the public. And what they're saying here is we made a tentative determination that we're going to release Exide from liability. We're going to say that the remediation is complete, and we're going to issue a certificate of completion. You'll notice on the bottom of that page, I highlighted it, is that the completion determination proposed for the facility is one that is complete without control. So they're saying you're done. Now, on page 2, they are saying to the public, first of all, we're gonna have a meeting at the Sullivan Independence Hall on December 19th, 2019. We're gonna give you information. And then you have 45 days, public, to submit anything that you wanna submit. And the last paragraph on page 2 says, before we make that tentative ruling permanent or final, we're gonna listen to what you have to say, public, and based on any new information, the department may modify its proposal. So the next page is where you write in the address to write in, and then on page, there's some background information. Page 5, you'll see a facility history and record of corrective action. But on the bottom of page 5, this is significant. It says that the cleanup was extensive. It involved remediation of subsurface drainage systems, leach fields at the site. On page 6 at the bottom, it says that the cumulative remedial actions completed between 05 and 13 result in removal of about 44,000 tons of impacted soil, lead, pH, and PCB. That's the upland soil removal. On page 7, it says upon completion of the upland soil removal, then they went to the Mill River. And actually, in that area, but regardless. From the Mill Pond, they dredged and disposed of 27,000 cubic yards of lead impacted sediment for the Mill River between October 14 and November 16. On the bottom of that page, it says, based on the confirmation data collected during the upland soil removal and the river sediment remediation, the site has achieved compliance with the residential standards of the RSR. Oh, and they also said, and after removal of the tainted soil, post-remediation groundwater monitoring, that was another 2.5 years. Based on all of that, they have reached compliance to a residential standard. That's very rare. When you get a site this dirty, now cleaned up to residential. This is the DEP saying this. And on page 9, they talked about long-term reliability and effectiveness. And they're saying there that what the cleanup did in essence is eliminated potential hazards and is therefore effective and reliable for both short-term and long-term. And then as far as implementability, they referenced the multiple phases of cleanup from the period of 1983 to 2018. That's a lot of years of cleanup. And the last thing they say on page 9 is that no contamination remains at the site, which may require further remediation. And then based on all this, they are poised to issue their corrective action without control. In other words, the certificate of completion. Now, I don't know, and this was all done November of 2019. Mr. Stanky's original memo, you remember, is 2013. He was out of office, I understand, in 2014. I don't know if he was in touch with that, with the DEP, if he responded, if he sent the letter. I don't know. I just don't know. I couldn't find anything from Mr. Stanky in reference to this. But if he didn't, he certainly had an opportunity to do so. That is a series of chronological documentation by the DEP, now clean to a residential standard. You have to weigh that against Mr. Stanky's latest letter to this commission dated August 22 of 24. When he said, and he talks about first his cautious nature, which is, it's nice to have a cautious nature, but that, that's speculation. So we need to talk about the difference between substantial evidence and speculation. So he speculates that due to his cautious nature in evaluating matters that have resulted in less than satisfactory outcomes. So he can't be talking about Exide, because Exide cleanup was really a model of a very successful remediation. So I think he's just talking in general terms. And then he says that it is the known unknowns that he's concerned about. And again, I submit that is very speculative. He goes into the same issues of the two pipes, the railroad and the storm drainage pipe that he did in that memorandum back 9 years earlier. And then on page 2 of this report, Mr. Stanky says, Exide did not make a wholesale excavation of the property to the depth of the groundwater. Now, I guess he's suggesting they should have done that, but that would be a preposterous thing to do. Groundwater on this site is it reached at an average of 9 feet below the surface. And to excavate 9 feet below the surface means that you would have to take out approximately, but pretty good approximation. Bobby Walker did this for me. 1,960,200 cubic feet of materials would have to come out. I don't think there's ever been a cleanup that would require that extensive wholesale excavation of the property. But he still says, I'm still concerned about whether leaded contamination may exist. That's speculative. He does say in the third thing, that because we're going to be talking in reference to some of the letters about our stormwater treatment, he does say that, and he compliments the applicant in this application on their well-intended and effective provisions for treating stormwater on the site and to improve water quality, which is nice. But then he goes on to say, I recommend, and he recommends prior to site disturbance, investigation, reporting, deep test holes, sampling, during site disturbance, periodically sampling and reporting on what's there, after completion, more sampling. And I would submit to this commission that to do that would be an egregious burden on anybody after what has been done on that site. And in fact, any condition that was placed on by any governmental agency on that, in my opinion, would be confiscatory. It would be a taking of this property, have to go through that type of further testing. The last part of this letter, he addresses the bulkhead, and just very quickly on the bulkhead, and I'll go back to it after the next letter. He says that the bulkhead was temporary, it was meant to be temporary, and that there was a cash performance bond of $107,000, which was supposed to be used to take out the bulkhead. Now, we had a conversation, I personally had a conversation with Mr. Stanky's successor. And he advised me that there was an agreement with the DEP to leave the bulkhead in place, and we'll say why, really to prevent the damage to the ecosystem, more disturbance. And it was because of that that the bond was released back to excise. So that's basically the Stanky letter. I do have, in terms of the success of Rob, would you give one to the chairman and one will just pass out? And I don't know if you've seen it, I suspect some of you have. This is, very quickly, this is the presentation of the Harbor Management Commission in September of 2020. All I want to say is on page 9, and of course, they are part of the grassroots groups with Fair Plan, as Ms. Brown knows, and others, officials, Shellfish Commission, the Harbor Commission, that did a great job in spearheading and became interpleters in the cleanup. But on page 9, in this write-up, it says that this cleanup was a model for environmental cleanup, a model for environmental cleanup, and he's right. They were right. On page 11, they talked about 11 acres that were dredged. And on page 3, they talked about after all the work was done, the monitoring revealed significantly below permitted limits of contaminants. That's what the Harbor Management Commission said.
I have a copy of it.
I don't have that one.
I assume it's the same. Go ahead, sorry.
So that was the opinion of the management, and I also found a meeting minutes of the August 15 of 23 Harbor Management Commission meeting minutes, and Mr. Stedman at that time, the consultant, provided a brief summary of the remediation activities, noted it was a very successful project, and in addition to other stakeholders, the Harbor Management and Shellfish Commission had significant roles in the remediation. So he was also touting the now, Rob, do you have the September 9? Is there more than one or just the one? Oh.
Let me ask a question, Attorney Walker. Let me make a suggestion and see if this makes any sense to you. But this is your show, so you do as you like. Is it worth at this point, if you have a few more things you want to put into record about the environmental or the bulkhead, let's do that.
I just have one more thing.
Okay, but after that, I would say go to your legal arguments. I would suggest the commission hold questions on environmental so we can go to public comments. And then in rebuttal, depending on what's said, we can make any kind of questions at that point on environmental or anything like that. Because I want to keep this moving. I think.
Could I suggest just one little?
That's fine. This is your show, so I want.
No, maybe it'd be more beneficial to go through, let me finish this one document.
Sure.
On the environmental. Then perhaps we could go to the public, because I could do the legal arguments.
That's true.
We could get that.
If that's your prerogative, I'll let you.
I think that would be better time. Okay.
Is that fair for the commission? Because I just want to get, we're already an hour and a half in. I'd like to get to public comments, see where we are with the public comments. And then once we have the public comment done, with rebuttal with his legal arguments to be made and any questions we have from environmental standpoint. I have a feeling maybe a few questions in that respect, we can ask him then. Is that fair? Okay, thank you.
This is AER, that Chris Copley, who is here, if you have questions after, he's here. But I asked him to review the Mr. Stanky's letter of August 23rd. And he reviewed that against as he says, the site history, the town records, the environmental documentation. He says that the remediation process included collection analysis of countless soil and groundwater samples. It was reviewed by the DEP scientists, engineers, and staff. The DEP visited the site routinely. Given this high level and analysis, and the stakeholders are entitled to be applauded for that. But this high level of analysis and scrutiny, public scrutiny, the most beneficial remedial actions were implemented There's no need for further investigation. On page 2, speculation cannot be a substitute for facts. Empirical documentation supports effective cleanup. Land Tech also, and you have in your materials, issued their own letter basically saying the same thing, that in their opinion, the cleanup was suspect. I was gonna comment on the Mill River wetland committee, but maybe they'll be here, so
Your call. I mean, if that's gonna be your last point, if you wanna make a quick comment on it.
why don't I do this quickly because I don't wanna lose Bobby Walker
That's fair.
here. The Mill River Wetland Committee issued a letter to this commission dated September 9th. You had it. And their focus, they said, was mainly on the proposed use of the ecosystem within and surrounding the Mill River. So their top concern, and again, it's speculative, but it's a concern, is the water quality impact of the proposal. Now, don't forget, on water quality, we have Jeff Stedman applauded that. He's the HMC's harbor management consultant. Mr. Stenke said there was no issue. The town attorney approved our proposed stormwater plan and treatment plan, and the DEP did as well. But in any event, they on page 2 of this report, they requested water monitoring by an independent laboratory funded by the applicant and so forth. And I have pretty much the same thing to say about this independent laboratory, but let me just in plain, simple language, because I'm not an engineer, but obviously if you need it. The stormwater system that we have proposed and it was approved by the DEP and by your town engineer is a hydrodynamic separator system. And Bobby had touched on this. I didn't understand half of what he said when he did, so I'm gonna say it my way. It's manufactured by Hydro International. The model is called First Defense. That's a national firm, Hydro International, a big firm. And what this hydrodynamic system does is in this chamber, the chamber spins. So they'll collect the groundwater in this chamber. It separates the oil on the top, which is skimmed off periodically. And then the solids, like the grit and the sand, sink to the bottom and are vacuumed out periodically. This is the same system that is used on 81 Black Rock, which is a multifamily development on Ash Creek. It's the same system that will be, and perhaps they've already started, to use this system at the Fairfield Middle School. So this system's been around for a long time. It's been tested. It's been approved by the DEP. It's called First Defense. And I just want to, for the record, so you can review it at your leisure. Rob, would you give that to the chairman? I only have one of this. But this is the operation and maintenance manual. The significant thing of this is they have very specific maintenance that our facilities people are going to do, which I'll talk about more in a minute. But that's the Hydro International. Also, the DEEP is going to be issuing a general permit for the ground stormwater discharge, both during the construction and post-construction. And I have, again, to the chairman, one copy of the very detailed permit and the requirements of the permit. And I had Land Tech do a very simple, plain language description of what it is, what it entails, and all the maintenance. So Rob, if you would.
Just give it to the Ms. Keo, please, to your left. Thank you.
And that's there. So I just want to say there's no legal requirement for any independent lab testing. We will comply with both of the recommendations to Hydro International and with our general permit. Having said that, and by the way, no municipality that I know of ever required an independent monitoring of a groundwater, stormwater system. And certainly the DEP does not require it. The town engineer here in Fairfield didn't require it. Notwithstanding that, Porsche does have a firm that it's a corporation, a corporate requirement. The firm is called KPA, another big international firm, and they are, as a corporate requirement from the Penske dealerships, every one of their dealerships, 346 dealerships, have to employ KPA. They go to every dealership 4 times a year. They monitor not only the storm water, oil separators and the various systems, but they even monitor the removal and reporting of any oil that they take out of cars and stuff. So they're very, very conscious Porsche is of complying with all environmental requirements. They don't want dirty sites. So I think the only other thing that the Mill River Wetland did in this letter, they suggested, that's right, Bobby, I want you to comment very quickly on this. They suggested a bioswale. We understand that bioswale will not work. Bobby, could you address that? What is a bioswale and why won't it work?
Yeah, so a bioswale is very similar to a rain garden, except for it's sloped. It's a conveyance measure that also provides water quality treatment. Generally, you want them in gently sloping land in the kind of 0 to 2%. Once you get over 2%, deep 2 to 6% deep requests that you put in check dams, which are additional structures to slow down the water. At our point of discharge, it's that slope piece of land down to the water, or much steeper than 6%, which makes it impractical to put a bioswale in that location, as they're talking about, which is part of the reason we ended up with the stormwater system we have. We have our hydrodynamic separator that then goes into infiltrators that also infiltrate the water quality volume, with only water in excess of that actually reaching the river. So while bioswales are great and they have their uses, this just isn't the site, and the situation doesn't fit that design solution.
Subject to addressing you on legal requirements and rebuttal,
You may have some questions based on what you said at what we just talked about the last 20 minutes, so part of what we just said, kind of a deal, so to speak. We may have some questions as we based on what we discussed the last 20 minutes. Okay, thank you, Attorney Wellinger. Thank you for your flexibility.
do I leave this?
So we will have some opportunity for some additional questions after the public speaks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, subject to what we literally just said, our further questions and Attorney Willinger's reservations, the initial application finished. We'll open it up to public comments. If any member of the public who is in person, we'll start with people who are in person, that wishes to be heard on 2190 Post Road. Ma'am, and then sir in the back. Right here, please, ma'am. If you can just any member of the public who wishes to speak, if you can just please give your name and your address, keep your comments germane to the issue. About it.
I sit.
Sit, stand, whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay, so my name is Adrienne Cantor. My husband David Cantor and I have owned a home in Fairfield since 2006. And because of my graduate education in city planning and my work as a transportation planner and in the general field of city planning for the past 25 plus years, I've always been interested in the built environment and what has been going on in that way in Fairfield. So I'm just going to read my comments.
And feel free to sit at the top.
Okay, yeah, I can see. I can probably be a little closer to my comments then. So I'm just going to go from there. When I learned about this special exception application for the Porsche dealership at 2190 Post Road, site of the former Exide battery location, I became very concerned since it does not comply with criteria articulated in requirement 27.4.1, stipulating that the location, type, character, and size of use and the buildings and structures shall be in harmony with and conform to appropriate and orderly development of the town and the neighborhood, and not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent property or impair its value, quote unquote. The proposed location is situated within the center area planning area boundaries. That's the term, Fairfield terminology, which means that this trademark building, which only covers 14% of the lot area and its surrounding parking lot, would undermine the town's interest in reinforcing a strong street wall and downtown character. Additionally, it would not offer the density of commerce that an area zone such as this area is designated should offer. In the interest of the town of Fairfield, I strongly urge the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to withhold this special exception and await a development that will blend more seamlessly into Fairfield's downtown in terms of street wall, density, and use. Thank you.
You've read it into the record. We'll take it if you like, but I don't think we need it.
Okay.
Thank you. Sir. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Halleck. I live on Somerville Street on the corner of Gold, 30 years.
What was your last name again? I'm sorry.
Halleck, Hallock. So I have issues with it overall. I mean, I think it might be good for a handful of people, but it certainly is very adversarial in Fairfield. I talked to Tom Stanky. I talked to him today. Thomas Stanky. And for those who don't know, maybe you're sick of hearing his name or whatever. He's, in my opinion, the greatest gladiator for the conservation, for the outdoors this town has ever had. He worked for over 40 years for this town. He's still very articulate and very involved and very interested in writing letters like that. And he is not satisfied with the environmental situation there. And whatever he says and whatever he feels, I think we should pay double attention to, really, and take it seriously and not dismiss it as speculative or other sort of dismissive. About the building itself, you know, it's not in harmony with the neighborhood. It's Bauhaus, right? That's modernism. That building, just look at that, you know, from Porsche, which is in Stuttgart, Bauhaus, which is in Weimar Republic, Volkswagen, Bavarian Auto Works, BMW, based in Munich. That's all down there in that Bauhaus Bavarian. It's not Fairfield, it's Germany. So the front is not in harmony. The back, it's ugly. You gotta remember 90% of the people are gonna see the back of that building. From 95, from the train station, you're gonna look at the back of the sign, the back of the building, it's ugly. And it's the wrong message. You're gonna have cars there that most people can't afford or don't even need, you know, talking about Bugattis and Ferraris. And that's the message from Fairfield, to put that there. It's not. And the footprint of it is bad. I mean, I saw in the records, like last year, they were in front of UI saying that, you know, it's pristine and it's beautiful and we have to keep it this way. And then before that, they had a developer in here that developed high density housing right there. So it's like, you know, just flipping and flopping like that. It's just it's the wrong message and it's not Fairfield anymore. It really isn't. The wrong footprint. And it just seems overall, the whole thing is just weird because it's like there's a perfectly good Porsche facility over there on Commerce Drive. The town has spent a lot of time and energy and money trying to develop that for the automakers over there. And it's split with the Audi facility, which makes sense. It's VW, Porsche, Audi. Remember, this is VW we're talking about. VW is, I think it's still the largest car company in the world. I know it's the largest car company in Europe. Toyota might have passed them worldwide. But that's really who the parent company is. We're talking about VW, Porsche, Audi. So when you hear like, and Porsche just spent a fortune. Look up what they just built in Atlanta. They spent $100 million building an experience center. It's all integrated with the environment, with like green grass, and you can drive the cars and experience. It's phenomenal. It really is. They're trying to be in touch with it. So it was like to say, okay, Porsche wrote a letter and said, you have to move because there's, we don't like the garage and the facility in two separate buildings. And I went over there and looked at it, and it's weird. It's like there's the Porsche Audi in the front, then there's like the train tracks, so you can't get through, and then there's a building in the back where it has Porsche, Audi, Mercedes. And again, a garage, you have to enter from Bridgeport, that's in Schofield. It's still Fairfield, but you can't get through because of the train tracks. You could. And again, those car companies, that's like Ford and GM being next to each other. It's a weird situation with having, like, they're not friends, BMW, Mercedes, and VW, Porsche, Audi. And to say now that, okay, then Porsche is gonna move out of that garage because they want them there, but they're still gonna have the garage for Mercedes, which their dealership is across the street on Commerce, but Audi is still gonna be there. It just seems like it, and there's a perfectly good dealership, but he wants to move now over to make it a Gen 5 dealership downtown. So environmentally, we're gonna destroy a perfectly good dealership for what seems to be like an ego project for somebody so they can have a brand new dealership downtown. It just doesn't jive. And really, and when I went back there and I looked at everything, it does bother me environmentally. I don't know if this is tangential or not, but you know, that Porsche parking lot backs up on Ash Creek. And they're not good environmental stewards back there. All the oil and everything is bad. There's a lot of stuff going back into the creek there, and I don't feel that they're gonna change. That it's not like you're gonna be environmentally not caring back here at this thing and then go over here and be good stewards of the environment. And especially now as Fairfield is trying to recapture a lot of the open space and Mill River and Sasko and Ash Creek and rediscover and recapture a lot of that for public use and for active recreation. To see these industries like that with the auto industry and there and hundreds of cars, you know, and that oil and the grease going into the Ash Creek like that, it's not efficient at all. It's not good at all, and it really strikes back at what the real problem is here. See, the problem with the car industry is cars. They're swimming in cars. They have hundreds and hundreds of cars all the time, coming and going, and the car jockeys. And so they're looking for a place to put all those cars. If you go there and it's all cramped in and all that room, and their problem, we are not the answer to their problem. They've got all those cars. That's the industry you're in. Build underground parking, create synergies with other car people there, or find out your own answers on Commerce Drive. Not plunking the answer over onto Fairfield. And I think the final thing I want to say about this is like it. You know, I don't really feel that Porsche Atlanta in America is on board with this. I don't feel that having them, that they want to shove a Porsche dealership into environmentally sensitive areas in the heart of downtown Fairfield like that. I don't think they're on that. And the same thing, you know, this isn't something I don't think anybody has thought about, but I have. I've been thinking about this for over a month, a lot. You got to remember, VW went through a horrible emissions scandal like 10 years ago. I don't know if you remember, but they had their vehicles and they were rigging the systems and they were saying that the emissions were cleaner than they really were. It was a huge deal. Like people went to jail, people lost their jobs. The value of the stock went down 25%. It was a huge thing. I mean, that would be like Ford going down 25%. It's a big, big deal for millions and millions of people. And if we do, and this becomes like an issue with the public not wanting this, and it becomes VW versus environmental concerns, and VW is being tone deaf, and especially in Europe, where there's different environmental standards, and it's not uncommon to see hundreds of thousands of people out in protests and things like that. This could really go sideways on VW. It could, and in Europe, and have bad reaction. It gets in the press, and I know what I'm doing for marketing and advertising. I know how to hit the wire services and get media relations and I can paint that story where it doesn't look good for VW at all. And their stock might go down and millions and millions of innocent people might be hurt because of that. I really think about that. It bothers me. So I hope we don't get to that.
Thank you. other member of the public in person in this room that would be heard in this application? Anybody signed up online?
We have Alexander Murphy.
Murphy? Oh, no, excuse me, Mr. Murphy, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, good evening. My name's Alexander Murphy. Excuse me. Actually, I go by Sandy. I live at 34 Smith Street. Excuse me. I've lived in Fairfield, near the center of town for 30 years, and along with my wife, have raised 4 children here. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Union College, and I received a civil engineering master's degree from City University of New York, specializing in traffic engineering. For 37 years, I was a highway engineer in the greater metropolitan tri-state area, first with New York State DOT in New York City, and then with various consulting firms in New York, New Jersey, and in Connecticut. I was a project manager on a wide variety of projects, often including arterial roadways like the Post Road. Since the pandemic, I've switched career in real estate, and that entails a lot of driving on local roads. That's in addition to having driven all my kids around in Fairfield over the years, and I've recently become a member of the town's bicycle and pedestrian committee, and that along with my real estate activity has made me much more aware of development projects in Fairfield, and has kind of led to me wanting to speak here at this meeting. I came in a little bit late, and unfortunately, I didn't see all of the traffic engineer's presentation, but I've read through the materials, and I've watched videos. Most of the videos of the first couple of meetings on the subject. And so I was first going to come because I'd read the traffic report and note that it didn't seem to include the road diet project that will be happening next year. It seems like that was discussed earlier before I got involved. I came in when Commissioner Randolph was having some questions with the traffic engineer, and I also would have concerns with those offset intersections, the existing roadways and the new driveways for the project. The main driveway, there's going to be a lot of turns that could potentially be conflicting with both the Fairfield intersection and also Lindbergh, and Lindbergh is also 2150 Post Road. I'd have some concerns about during the PM peak, the traffic exiting that building at the same time that all these other turns could be going on. And then even, I know that the westerly intersection is an exit only, except maybe for park users, but it's very close to the signalized intersection at Sasko Hill. And so it's just not ideal in my opinion, from a traffic perspective to introduce these conflicts. And I recognize that whatever facility or whatever development goes in to this space, they're all going to have their own traffic issues because it is such a busy roadway. But I did just want to go on record that I see that some of these sort of offset intersection situations could be problematic. So that's basically all I want to say.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Harrigan, anybody?
We also have John Dilly?
Mr. Dilly, can you hear us? You're up next.
I can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm traveling, so I apologize for the background noise and the connection, but I'll be brief. First and foremost, I want to thank the applicant and Attorney Willinger for addressing the comments we made in our letter. And I don't want to go over anything that was already on the record from my letter. I'm president of the Mill River Wetland Committee, and I've lived here in town for 25 years. I live at 50 Centerbrook Place. The main two comments I have are that, yes, our primary focus is the water quality in the adjacent Mill River. We just want to make sure the applicant is going to, adhere to their comments that I've heard them make here and also at the Harbor Management Commission, that the water going into the river will be the same or better condition than the water in the river already. I understand about the environmental organization that they Porsche hires or Penske hires, and I think that's a really nice addition. So I appreciate that's in place. I will say, as recent as today, the town engineering department does not have the details, or could not provide me with the details of what was going to be happening, where the water was going to be running from the pipe out of the hydrodynamic separator, and whether there was going to be a deep permit. So all I'm asking for is that this commission make sure that they touch bases with town engineering and deep as required if the jurisdiction applies, to ensure that we understand where this water is going to run from the pipe out of the hydrodynamic separator. I think Attorney Willinger's description of that device was spot on, and I think it is the solution for this particular location based on the water tide and the soil situation prior to their application. So I just wanted to say, like I said, thank you for considering our comments. Our concern is water quality, and we would ask that we make sure that our town engineering department and DEEP understands the output of that pipe and where it's going to go, and the quality of the water that it's going to put into the Mill River. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harrigan, anybody else that you see online, or should I make an announcement?
If you want to go ahead and make an announcement, but I think that might be it.
Is there any member of the public that's joining us remotely or by phone that should be heard in this application, 2190 Post Road? Any member of the public in person or on by remote or by phone that wishes to be heard in this application? See anybody by phone?
Nobody else who's indicated.
Okay. The letters will be part of the record. Hearing nobody, I'll close the public comment portion. We'll turn back to the applicant for a vote. Thank you for being flexible, Attorney Willinger. Well, I suspect what we'll do now is, and this is up to Attorney Willinger because it's his rebuttal. I suspect Attorney Willinger maybe go through your presentation on legal aspects, and then we'll have, if there's questions from the commission about legal or environmental, we'll make those questions.
Would you mind if I hold legal out to last? 'Cause we have our experts here, and I heard you had some questions on the environmental. So what I'd like to do, there's not much rebuttal on the opposition.
I got you.
No, so that'll.
All right, so I guess for the commission then, are there questions that we have on environmental?
I had one traffic question. It sort of go out of order. Was the traffic plan submitted to the town engineer?
I know that code enforcement has approved the application. Mr. Willinger will correct me if I misspoke on that stat, but code enforcement has reviewed and approved.
It was
Did the town engineer review the curb cuts and traffic configuration on the post road?
It was available to him. I don't know. I didn't get any input from a specific letter from him.
This is a state highway, right?
It is a DOT.
Right, but
whether he reviewed it,
it goes to there's a copy sent to the town engineer?
It's actually part of
Yes,
the whole process.
Yeah, there were, I'm sorry, Jim went for the record, there were DOT comments that
The town,
referred to previously that were submitted to the town engineer
okay, the town engineer had access to the report
from DOT.
from DOT. Got it. Okay.
And also the police department weighed in on it.
Yeah, so I just, cause I asked them and they said they hadn't received it, so is that an administrative issue, but you provided it and they didn't review it, or?
I don't know if they reviewed it. I hope they did, but
Yeah, cause they said they didn't, so it would be useful if they, and I'm sorry, I should know the steps more clearly, but if they could get that, that was my only question.
Commissioner Braun.
Okay, so I have a few questions, but the first one has to do with the stinky memo. So we have a lot of history here. Just to recap, pollution took place from 51 to 81. The cleanup took place from 81 till around 2018 with a certificate in 2020, sorry, 2019. And the land.
Just ask the questions.
Okay, I have to give that background to ask the question. Okay, Tom Stanky was here from 1971 to September of 2014. His memo was written in June of 2013. And his memo has identified the source, he said it's verified, the source of pipes that were not investigated. For whatever reason, DEP did not make them do it. They asked him for proof, and his memo has like a picture of where the pipes put lead directly into Mill River. One was along the railroad tracks, a 900-foot pipe. One was along the post road. And for whatever reason, at least by the time he left in September of 2014, that investigation was not done. So I guess my question is, do we have anything from DEP saying that those pipes were investigated that he mentioned? Because apparently they ordered Exide to look at the pipes, but then the pipe had collapsed and they didn't do it, and it was never ordered, as far as he knows. He left again, he retired in September of 2014. So I have a question on whether those pipes were investigated, because he believed that his history showed there was lead historically coming out of those pipes, and that they were never investigated, at least by the time he retired. So that's one question. The other one has to do with the.
Let them
Yeah,
answer the
okay,
question.
well, yeah.
all right, in reference to that, we do know, because there's correspondence and evidence here, that the Exide folk did go to at least one of those drains, I'm not sure which one. They videoed what they could do, they sent that to the DEP. The drain itself was either collapsed or impacted somehow. So they tested the soil right next to that pipe that was there. And they videotaped it, they sent it to the DEP. And that was ultimately part of that correspondence that I submitted today, where they said the drainage pipes were no longer an issue.
So was that done after September, when he retired, September of 2014? So I don't see any, I need to see that, because what he's saying is throughout his tenure here, they tested 30 feet of the pipe, it collapsed, they were supposed to test more, they didn't. And whether or not, and because they're, not just that it collapsed, but it was obstructed. So because it was obstructed, whatever lead was in there probably wouldn't have leached out, but if they start digging it up, it might leach out now. So that's the concern that he expressed in the letter.
That was in June of 13.
Right.
And the letters that I went through today were years later, when the DEP specifically says that the drainage pipes have passed muster. That's part of what submitted to
I
me.
guess I'd have to know which pipes they're talking about, but if there's any way of getting that, that'd be great. If they could specify that what he was talking about, which apparently in his mind still existed till September of 14 when he retired, you know, I would like to know if, because he has a diagram of where those pipes came from. One is 900 foot long along the train tracks, and they only looked for 30 feet. So that's what I would like to know.
We'll put that on the list,
Okay.
and I'll try to get more specific.
And then the other thing is the bulkhead. I know that there was a wetlands permit issued in 2004 to do the land cleanup, and that was done in 2005. And as part of the land cleanup, the wetlands were destroyed, okay? There were no more inland wetlands, so no more permit is required now for what you did, okay? but the permit was ongoing because once the land was cleaned up, then the river could be cleaned up. The river was cleaned up, they started applying like in 2012, but the work started, I think, like 2014. But that structure was basically a sedimentation and erosion control structure. And according to his August letter, it was really to enable the staging and the heavy work to be done for the river cleanup without the river or the land invading each other, okay? Because there had been one recontamination in the past, when they cleaned up either the river or the land. So what he's saying is it was temporary, and because it's temporary, it's supposed to be restored back to a natural shoreline. And whether or not a natural shoreline would be destabilized, I don't know. I mean, we have natural shorelines on every river and the whole coast. It seems to me that it should be investigated. I'm wondering if you did investigate the possibility of restoring it, because my understanding is it wouldn't have to be that much horizontal distance. It might be under 50 feet to have a grade for a natural shoreline, which is normal, which used to be there. So that's my question is, did you look into it? And if the land is clean, what is the problem? Unless you want the bulkhead there to prevent the tide from going into your property where your cars are kept.
Okay, so the answer to the question is, let me first address this. We believe leaving the bulkhead in has a lot of advantages. We believe that and in your handouts here, and exhibit of this action is the AER letter that's Chris Copley that I talked about. Maybe I didn't mention it. Let me mention it now. AER Chris Copley, who's here, said that if that the bulkhead created a wall between the river, obviously, and the upland soils. If it's removed, that soil can migrate freely into the Mill River, is what he's saying. He reviewed the working drawings, there's 17 pages, he showed me 17 pages of working drawings. He said the bulkhead was meant to remain in place. They drove those sheet metal sheets, bulkhead sheets, 11.5 feet into the underlying marine sediment. And if you had to take those out now, he said it would cause, in his opinion, substantial damage. The public access is better off having that because it stabilizes the public access area, which is the park. Notwithstanding that, or then of course Tim Bishop said the same thing. You saw his report, I think. Tim Bishop sent a letter to this commission August 12th saying that he recommends that the bulkhead not be removed or the soils touched. His commission wants a no plow area next to the water. But the big thing, the overriding thing is neither the owner of the property nor certainly the applicant, my client, or frankly, this commission or even the town of Fairfield has jurisdiction over that bulkhead. That's strictly the domain and the jurisdiction of the DEEP. And so the DEP is the one, and the only one that could say how the bulkhead gets repaired or replaced or removed. So, it's really a DEP issue. He did say that the owner of the property, and that's in that easement agreement, will have the obligation to repair that bulkhead. That bulkhead issue is on the applicant, not the town. But it's a jurisdictional question.
Well, if it's a condition of the wetlands permit, you have the wetlands permit and the plans you mentioned just now, are those plans that were associated with the inland wetlands permit enabling the structure to be built, the bulkhead structure?
I am not sure if there was. I don't believe there was an inland wetland.
There was. I absolutely know there was. There was a wetlands permit in 2000. I have a copy somewhere.
DEP doesn't, why would it be inland wetlands? It's a
There
title.
were wetlands there in 2004. there were wetlands along the coast right there, along the shoreline. It was a natural shoreline. And they didn't even build that bulkhead till the river was cleaned up. They didn't even build it for the land cleanup. They needed it for the river because they had to stage their equipment and they wanted to, according to the Stanky letter, they had to keep it separated. But the point is, if it is a temporary structure as part of a wetlands permit, it seems to me it has to be removed as part of a wetlands permit, even though they returned the bond. Unless the commission modified the permit and said you no longer have to restore the shoreline, because normally if you do work along the shoreline as a part of a wetlands permit, you have to restore it and have plantings, and that would be a stable shoreline then, wouldn't it? That's my question. Do we have those plans that show what that structure was? Because to me, it should be restored back to its natural state. Then you would have access to the river.
Structure meaning bulkhead itself?
The bulkhead should be removed, yeah. If it was a temporary erosion and sedimentation control structure as part of that ongoing permit, which lasted a long time, I know they released the bond, like, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. But I found the minutes and I couldn't see anything in the minutes that even discussed modifying the permit.
Well, I will say, I don't know about the inland wetlands at that time, but I'm sure you do, and I believe you, because you're involved in it. I can tell you now, though, there's no wetlands, it's tidal now.
That is
so it's
true.
under the DEP. But we contacted Susan Jacobson from the DEP. And I have an email, I'd be glad to submit it. In fact, let me do that to you.
Yes, I do it.
Oh, you have it?
No, do it, I'll submit it.
Okay. Oh, here's 2 copies, one for whoever. This email said that the bulkhead, speak to your point, the bulkhead was most likely installed landward of our jurisdiction when it was first installed. That would go to what you had said.
I'm sorry, landward?
Landward,
What does that mean?
close, on the land side.
The state has jurisdiction of tidal wetlands and a certain distance, I believe, and we had dual jurisdiction back then. The town had inland wetlands and the state had jurisdiction on the tidal water body that was there, right?
They do,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, just shorthanded.
So she's saying, Ms. Jacobson, that the bulkhead was outside of their jurisdiction when it was first installed. It was installed forward of the bulkhead, and that was dredged as part of the remediation project. After the dredging was complete, the bulkhead was in a regulated area, because when remediation complete, that became a tidal area, so it took it out of the jurisdiction of the wetlands. Given this sequence, the bulkhead is not considered a violation. Please note that any further work on the bulkhead will require permitting from our office.
State violation, but they can't comment on whether it's a wetlands obligation to restore. That's my question. So I was wondering if you have plans of that original bulkhead, that might make some notation about that.
I will put that on the list, because I know there were 17 pages of plans.
And then the secondary question is, because the bulkhead is there, it really does deny access to the river. And part of our coastal site plan review is 2 missions. I'm not gonna present everything I have here, but 2 missions, protect the coastal resources and highly prioritize water dependent uses. Because that bulkhead is there and you're not offering anything to allow access to the river, and you're in the easement language, you're denying the public from the ability to use boats or kayaks. I remember discussions back then 20 years ago. This was envisioned to be a natural area with osprey platforms and kayak launches and a natural shoreline. So even if the bulkhead remained, there's no access to the river. And by disallowing, we could put a boat in there anyway, you have to drop it over a 4-foot ledge, okay? But I mean, there's no ability to use the river at all. You'd have to dive in. So there's no access being provided to the river, in part because the bulkhead is there. So I assumed you wanted the bulkhead because it does hold the tide back from the inventory, but that's not an environmental solution, you know? And so that's what I have to say about the bulkhead. Regarding the soils, I just have a few more questions. Did you must have done a phase 2, and you did test pits.
The owner did a phase.
Before they bought it, I assume, yeah.
Yeah, and Porsche also did, their environmental team was.
Did they test for lead?
they did a very extensive environmental inspection. I don't know if specifically if they tested for lead.
Would it be possible to get those results? Because if they tested where those pipes are, you know, and if, I don't know how deep you'd have to test, but if it'd be interesting to see if they tested for lead and they found lead, okay?
Put that on
And
the
keeping,
list.
then another thing in the Stanky letter, he mentioned there is a, well, I know there's an elevator, but does that go down deep into this? I'm trying to figure out how deep down you're gonna be disturbing the underground soils.
We're going in a very distinct area, which is the building footprint, which is I think about 40,000 square feet or so, 40 or 42,000. And where our drainage system is gonna go, our stormwater.
What about the elevator? Does that go down lower? Or that's in the building, but does that go down? How deep does the elevator go?
The elevator in our proposed
Like,
building?
yeah, how deep does that go underground?
It won't go to groundwater, 9 feet. And we're not gonna go deeper than 9 feet in any area.
Could the engineer just back that up when he talks, or is he gonna? Okay.
Willie, you're asking?
Whoever your engineer is, yeah, just to verify that.
You want them to do it now or one of
Well,
them?
I have a few more questions, maybe I'll just go through them. And as far as, the engineering department, you know, the package is 300 pages long. I have not found it. Is it an email that's buried in the package somewhere from our engineering department saying the stormwater system is good? Like, I haven't seen something.
Code review.
A code review is not the same as a comment. Code review, they don't even identify the plans they're looking at. It's usually about a month before the application.
I had personally, with our engineer, met with the town engineer. They approved everything. I thought it was in the code review.
Well, if it's,
Well, we can reach out.
I'd like to
we have
know
both.
what they said,
We got both.
if they have anything. And
Mr. Wentz saying we may have it. If not, we can do it after the hearing. Hold on.
I'm concerned also about when the system overflows because of too much rain, that could go directly into Mill River. And it's a completely piped stormwater system until it gets discharged, and there's no like remediation through a nature through you know, rain garden or swales or anything like that. My understanding is from, I'm not an engineer, that having more distance with certain plantings cleanses dissolved toxins much better than just having a completely mechanized system and then pretty much going through riprap into the river. So if you have dissolved toxins like road salts or things like that, and you have a lot of cars, a lot of customer cars, employee cars, other vehicles, it seems to me like there could be a lot of dissolved pollutants that end up in the river that have not been fully remediated. That would be my concern, and I would suggest that you ask Mr. Penske if he could expand the open space area. I would like to see it doubled, because that could solve the issue raised by Mill River Wetlands Committee and a bunch of other of I think Sustainable Fairfield wrote a letter. They're all kind of like saying the same thing. We need more land. We need more open space. Not just for the stormwater system to do a better job, but also to have more of a nature environment, which is what was envisioned. So what you have now is you have 0.9 acres, half of which is under Mill River, which is a tidal water body. I don't even know if you can give an easement under a tidal water body, but the other half is on a steep slope, half of the other half, maybe a 1/4 acre strip. And then there's a 1/4 acre strip of flat land. I'd like to see that doubled by getting rid of some of the extra parking, because that would then enable more of natural plantings. And that's what we heard from some of these green letters that came in. Some of the same issues were talked about at the harbor management meeting. I got the minutes. They basically were worried about water quality floating downstream. I know there was a jurisdictional issue there. And they chose not to write us a letter because they didn't wanna affect our decision. Because I guess if they write a negative letter, it would require a supermajority in our commission to approve it. But they did express concerns with water quality. So we've heard concerns about water quality from a number of environmental groups, experts, I think improving the stormwater system and having more natural land to do what Mr. Dilly suggested. And it would also satisfy or get us closer to what I think anyone who was involved with the river cleanup and the land cleanup for the last 20 or 30 years would have envisioned, a much more natural solution. Another point, I haven't heard about the landscaping and I think one of the letters from either the forestry committee, which is also our pollinator committee as well, they both or the sustainability letter, I read both of them today. They both wanted,
I think they both came in today.
yeah, they both came in today, so I just read them quickly, but they both wanted more open space and more natural plantings. And I think you have to think of it in, there's two projects. There's the commercial project that ends with the fence, and there's the open space project. And the open space project needs a whole lot of work on the landscaping. I don't know what could be done on the commercial project, but I'm wondering if you could have more natural plantings there. I know that last time they said it was very restrictive because of the dealership.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, okay. One of those groups also mentioned more green, I know it's not an LEED qualified, but can you do more with pavers, with solar panels, more plantings, more native plantings, even on the commercial side?
Point of clarification on that. In the documents, it said it was lead, then we heard it wasn't lead, we heard Porsche was committed to lead.
I can speak to that.
Please do.
I originally, in the very original application, in the statement of use, I had thought, and there was a miscommunication between my office and the engineers, I thought it was a Leeds building. And although they have a lot of Leeds features, we could talk about it, it is not a certified, it will not be a certified. So that was an error on my part.
One last thing I want to point out, and just I'll submit this. This is not the only time the town has intervened in that stretch of river. You may or may not be familiar with this, but the town intervened along with the city of Bridgeport when a 345 kilovolt cable system was proposed to cover all three of our rivers, Ash Creek, Mill River, and Sasko Creek, with a large container bridge, which would obstruct the view of people driving down the post road of the Mill River. The town intervened, this was in 2006, and a consent decree or a stipulation was reached by all the parties, which allowed that power cable to not be built on container bridges obstructing the view of either any of those rivers. It was put underground on Ash Creek. And I think because Mill River still had to be remediated, it was attached to the bottom of the bridge. So I would just like to show this to you and maybe submit it. So the town cares deeply about this river, and that whole thing was brought out because of mostly visual. So now you have a visual of kind of an ugly back of a building, and you have an industrial use, and you have this corrugated metal steel bulkhead, and no access to the river and very little nature. So I just want to point out this, to point out that the town intervened twice to protect that river, okay? This was the first time in 2006. And the second time was in 2013 when the river cleanup was gonna happen. So I would say, ask Mr. Penske if he can modify his design standards and the number of parking spaces needed so we can have a better open space system. And I think all my questions are sublimated under that overarching desire. I do feel that we need some more data about the bulkhead and about the lead in the pipes.
So those are a lot of areas. So before we lose our engineer, Bobby, I'd like you to address, I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. The first thing I'd like you to address is the excavation. Engineer concerning our excavation. How deep are we gonna go and where are we actually digging?
So inside the building itself, I don't know the exact depths for you, Chuck. That's really more structural and architectural side. So for that, I can't tell you. For our stormwater system, we do have it designed as an infiltration system, so that will be above the groundwater. I believe it's a 1.5 foot separation for the infiltration section.
Groundwater is 9 feet.
Correct. The only component that may come close to groundwater is the bottom of the hydrodynamic separator. That is a sealed system. The groundwater will not be able to enter. It's just as you place it in, it has a foundation that extends below the bottom a little bit. So no, yeah.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the town engineering department has approved our stormwater system?
Yeah, so we've been working with the town engineering department. They were actually our first call when we got started on this. Before we went to code review, we reached out to them, make sure we were in understanding of what requirements they were gonna hold us to on the site. We've talked to them with code review. All of our plans have been submitted to them. In following up after our initial submittal, the comment we received back was to make sure we sent it to DEEP. That then went to DEEP. You guys have all seen the DEEP letter that came back that mentions our stormwater report and provides no additional comments on it.
So did you make comments about the open space access, public access?
Yes, but not on stormwater specifically.
The next question, and it's actually one of the people that spoke in opposition. Well, I don't know so much in opposition, Mr. Dilley wanted to know where the water will run out of the drainage pipe.
Yeah, so as Catherine mentioned, we have a RIPRA ultimate discharge for the river. That said, that is after it goes. So to kind of just recap, all of our storm inlets throughout the entire parking area and site, the roof leaders, those impervious areas are all directed to the hydrodynamic separator, which then mechanically separates the oils and sediments from the water. Then in addition to that, we have kind of a, belt and suspenders approach where we have infiltrators designed to hold the entire water quality volume. So that's the first 1.3 inches of rain over the impervious area of the site. That then can infiltrate into the ground, so that water does not go into the river directly. And then it's in excess of that in your 25, 50 years, larger storm events, you have water coming out, discharging through the storm gap to prevent erosion along the slope, and then ultimately into the river.
Let him ask the question.
As a follow-up to that, Commissioner Braun had asked in a major storm, the system may overflow, the floodwater may overflow and go directly into the river. What is your comment on that?
Yeah, so the kind of whole design approach from the stormwater manual town requirements is that most of the pollution is in the first 1.3 inches of rain. That's because, if you have debris on the road, there's, oil in the parking lot or anything like that, it would, in that first flush, that's where the pollutants are conveyed. After that, you're getting the pure rainwater because everything's kind of been washed clean to a certain extent. So that's the design approach we're taking. It's going through the system. That first 1.3 inches is staying in this containment area, and that infiltrates, and then it's the excess water that bypasses to the river.
Where does it go? Through the pipe or over land?
Through the pipe, because this is an entirely underground system.
I guess if there's too much rain, it would just flow over the land, wouldn't it? If there's a 1,000-year storm like we had recently.
I mean, at the point where you're gonna have water start bubbling up from these inlets, we are higher on these inlets.
You mean the manholes? Or are those?
The catch basins, storm inlets, yeah.
Okay, so that happens frequently in our town, but anyway, so where that starts bubbling, it goes over land into the river, right?
I mean, ultimately, if you had a catastrophic event, I will say our inlets are higher than the ones in the street. So if you're in a situation where that's happening on our site, the post road is already entirely underwater. So, we're talking about true catastrophic storm events, at which point you can never design for if there's a major flooding.
How would this be designed if it was a true?
Hold on.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. Very well, did you have any further questions?
Well, I wanted to go into, you had a landscaping issue, so if you want to stay on the drainage, we could.
Can I ask him?
Hold on. Commissioner Braun for drainage and.
What is the impervious surface? I don't remember if that was answered last time. I know the property without the half acre that's in the water is probably 6.8 acres or so, or no, 5.8 acres or so, or.
Yeah, so are you talking for total impervious area?
Well, the whole land now is like, say, 5.8 acres.
6.2.
But that includes half an acre under the water, under the river.
Yeah, so I know last time you had asked if I could provide the area outside of the easement and what the impervious percentage of that land excluding the easement is. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, well, whatever you got, I'd like to know, like, whether it's, I guess the whole land parcel, how much of that is gonna be impervious?
Yeah, so if you exclude the easement area entirely, so this entire landscape section is not included, you have 5.29 acres left. Of that, 4.253 acres is impervious, which comes out to a roughly 79–80% impervious area for this portion of the site, which is not out of line with, typical commercial industrial development.
And the other part has very little, you have a sidewalk and
Yeah, I don't have the exact impervious of that off the top of my head, but it would be relatively minor.
and mean high water would be the edge of the bulkhead?
Mean high water is contained within the bulkhead, so doesn't overtop the bulkhead. essentially.
Let's go to Commissioner Randolph on a
Yeah,
drainage
a
question.
brief question on drainage. So your riprap surge protector is existing, is that correct?
It's existing, but will be upgraded as part of this development, so.
It's not usually known as a positive, as a nice feature. Is there an opportunity to move that to a less central location in the park area?
So you're talking about move the actual stormwater discharge point further up or down the river? So we kept it there as it's the historic discharge point from the remediation. Generally, you try to reduce changing flow patterns as much as possible. So that is the rationale in keeping it in that location.
Is it possible to move it to a less conspicuous spot because it's not very attractive?
Is it possible? Certainly there may be some design.
Within reason, just possible within reason. If it takes additional study, you don't.
It's hard to say without having studied it and looked at that as an option.
Yeah, and then second on the drainage, bioswales or swales are widely used now, and I know that in the statements about Porsche's commitment to the environment, they seem to be very committed. There are measures on the building, but the 80% impermeable surface in the general, say, trees is a nuisance because it's gonna drop leaves in the cars. Is there an opportunity to put bioswales in within the parking area as catchments to?
It presents a number of operational challenges for the dealership itself, as well as maintenance concerns. Ultimately, in this type of situation, I personally feel, in my professional opinion, that the hydrodynamic separator provides a better solution.
Thank you.
I'll note we have about 25 minutes left before we hit our curfew. We've been at this for 3 full meetings. We actually should have 4 because we didn't get to them, so if we go beyond today, it has to be on a consent to extend. I'm not even sure that I want to ask for it because I think I want to finish today. So if we don't finish today, I'm staying late beyond 10. But we really need to have, I think, pressing questions to do that. So having said that.
I have a question for him.
No, I know, I understand, but I just, like I said, we should be finishing up in the next 25 minutes, is my point.
I forgot, you're a civil engineer, right?
That's correct.
Okay, you do stormwater also as part of that?
Yeah.
So what types of toxins are dissolved that could get through this system? I'm thinking road salts.
So as far as specific toxins, I can't give you exact breakdown off the top of my head. This system is designed to remove sediment and oils particularly. Okay. And then for this infiltration system, that again is taking that first 1.3 inches and then filtering it through the ground and ultimately infiltrating it into the ground. Okay. So back to that earlier methodology, the intent and kind of the way all the codes are written in the deep manuals, that first 1.3 inches is carrying all of that stuff into it. And so that's your water quality.
If you were designing an LID system, how much extra space would you need to put those swales with low impact development? Where they use natural,
There's not a straightforward answer to that question because when doing low impact development systems like that, you have, probably 20 different options you can use to meet that requirements, whether it's impervious pavement, all of this. those things. So there's no true answer, simple answer to that. It's a whole different.
With more space, you would be able to put some swales in and it would help.
I don't necessarily say it helped. It's another approach to
With
storm.
proper plantings and things like that.
Well, I mean, once again, this is an approved system, we use these all the time throughout town. They're used throughout Connecticut and the nation.
Oh, but this is a sensitive environmental area.
Yeah, and I mean, this was recently used at 81 Black Rock directly next to Ash Creek in a very similar
I voted
situation.
against that. I didn't think it was a good idea. So I don't think it's a good idea to directly discharge into the river on a sensitive part of the river that we just spent 30 years cleaning up.
And
So
again,
I'm asking you, if more open space was there, could you move more towards a low impact development type of scenario?
I mean, theoretically,
Yeah,
theoretically, if, you had a full green site, you could do a ton of options. But ultimately, this is the development and this is the stormwater system that
I mean,
meets
can
the
they,
requirements.
well, I'm asking, okay, I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't wanna belabor it, but and then the landscaping plan, where does that stand? Because from the letters we've gotten, they're waiting for it and they don't have it yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're talking about just the commercial side or the other side, how flexible is the applicant with doing whatever our people want done?
Yeah, so I mean, with the landscaping plan, we've been working with town staff since code review. We made several landscaping changes based on their recommendations, including adding additional ornamental trees along the post road. After Harbor Commission, met with representative of the Wetlands Commission. What's the?
Mary Hogue?
Yeah, Mary Hogue.
But in her letter, or one of either her letter or the other letter, they said they're waiting for a landscaping plan and it's not
For
adequate.
a list of plantings, I thought it was.
One of them did, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they said it was gonna be native plantings throughout anyways. So.
Yeah, so could you submit that email chain I sent to you, Chuck, to the record?
Yes.
Okay, so my email chain between myself and Mary Hogue was submitted where we shared some proposed alternative plantings in the easement area based on the native planting plan she shared with us that hadn't been approved yet, but she gave it to us ahead of time to become in conformance with that. Then after that meeting, we met with Conservation Department. They suggested some additional plant substitutions to change these trees to eastern redwood, which just in their experience survive better in these coastal environments. And so we've been reaching out to them. We sent them a plant list in advance saying that, there may be additional changes from conservation, but here's what we're thinking, and spoke with them at that time several months ago.
And that's on the public access part. How about on the commercial part?
So on the commercial part, I don't believe we've received any specific questions other than in our code review. It was asked we add, originally it had entirely honey locust in here. It was requested we do some plant variations, so we added some little leaf lindens throughout the parking area as well. Other than that, I don't believe we've received any particular public comments on those plantings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me just supplement that by saying we have no objection in the public access area for as long as the Conservation Commission wants to meet with these other groups, that's fine, and what they come up with within reason is fine with us in that area.
So we have not gotten input actually from the three commissions that intervened, Conservation Commission, Harbor Management Commission, or Shellfish Commission. Have you reached out to any of those commissions or gone? I know you went before Harbor Management, but Shellfish Commission, there's a shellfish bed there. I know it's restricted, but it's restricted because there was lead in there for like 50 years. I mean, do they know about this? Like, has anyone talked to the Shellfish Commission or gone before them, or the Conservation Commission? I haven't gotten anything from the commissions.
We have talked detail to Tim Bishop, who's a director, and they've had several meetings. Not an open meeting for us, but so the commission knows all about this. But
I don't have any input from the commission. Do they have minutes or anything that says that they're okay?
Mr. White, go ahead.
And I will direct you that you have an August 12th, 2024 memo from the Conservation Director in the record with respect to what you're referring to, and specifically regarding the bulkhead. I'm not gonna read it, but that's.
I've read the letter. It says it's gonna go to the commission, but I don't think we heard from the commission.
we haven't,
Okay,
then
so we don't
be
have
it.
it.
I
That's
mean,
all right.
So and then and just to follow up to the question before in the landscaping, if you look at the listed exhibits, there's a September 6th revision to the landscaping plan that's listed as exhibit number 2 in our listing of stuff that describes what was just described to you. There's a 3-page memo of talking about the changes that were made in the landscaping as a result of those conversations.
I'm just thinking of the letters we got today that.
Yeah, I don't know that that's exhibits there. It's exhibit number 2 in the list. I can't explain what.
very well, we can turn to your legal conclusion arguments unless there's anything else.
No other questions of our experts?
Thank you, Jeff.
Can I submit that to here, put that, pass it down.
Okay. So in reference to this last part of our presentation, which is a discussion of legal standards and issues that we have to consider making this decision. We all know that the property is in 2 zones, design industrial and design commercial. The building is entirely within the design industrial portion of the building of the property. The use is a permitted use subject to special exception approval in both zones. So we're talking about the permitted use as long as we adhere to the special exception approval process. Now, in a special exception approval, the first thing we have to do is demonstrate that our plans comply with all of your, what they call the technical zoning regulations, which are your development standards, your performance standards, and so forth. And then there's the general, not the specific technical requirement, the general requirement that there be no health and safety and adverse impacts on property values and such. That's so you have this general and the specific. As far as the specific technical zoning regulations, I think the code enforcement hearing has confirmed that we do meet those regulations. If you take a look at tab M, I have in my handout, those are the regulations for the design industrial system. And if you go to page number 80, you'll see the performance standards. And we are, and I'll go through them quickly to 21.6. We are not going to be emitting any offensive dust or dirt or odors or fumes or liquids off-site. There's not going to be any noise or vibration outside of our property line. There's no waste that will be discharged into any stream or storm drainage system other than groundwater. And there will be no dangerous materials which are used or stored except in accordance with governmental codes and regulations. That's why we have those independent firms that I was talking about quarterly inspecting the site. We comply with your lot area and shape. We comply with your access ways, minimum 30-foot curb cuts. We comply with your setbacks, with your height of this building. Could be 40 feet and 4 stories, we're 34 feet and 2 stories. As far as coverage and bulk, we are substantially under what is allowed. Now, there's been some discussion last time that conformity with the neighborhood means that we have the same coverage, or nearly the same coverage and bulk as our neighbors. It turns out that in essence we do. I have a very important exhibit to show you on that point in a little bit. But I do want to tell you that, in my opinion, I believe that the reason there's really no opposition to this to speak of is because the neighbors are in favor of this development with the low impact on density and coverage and traffic and so forth. I think it's something we want. We don't want a large-scale residential development, I can tell you that. And what speaks volumes is the fact that you don't have 100 people here like you did on that veterinary across the street where Carvana is now, that application. Landscaping, your code, your regulations say it has to be suitable landscaping. Now, suitable landscaping, I can tell you, we can't do much at all on our commercial, except for this landscaping plan, because Porsche has had a lot of problems with when there's more trees, bigger trees, different types of trees, literally impacting very seriously their inventory. So that landscaping plan is what we could live with. And it's suitable. If you take a look at the landscaping in other dealerships, take a look at the Carvana site, there's none. Take a look on Commerce Drive, not only the Land Rover, but frankly, all those dealerships there, including the Penske dealerships there, don't have the landscaping that we propose on this plan. And we comply with your regulations in that regard. On the, I'm gonna skip page 104, that was a mistake being in there. But those are the criteria for design industrial. On the design business criteria, that's N, tab N. And that says in your design commercial district, section 12.6 is an important regulation. It says that you can store automobiles outside of the building as long as three requirements. Number one, those automobiles are on the same premises as the business of the dealer. Number two, there's a setback requirement, which is section 27.4A2, which is the center design business district, 10-foot setback. We adhere to that. Number three, if there are five or more, more than five vehicles that are waiting repair and they're outside, you have to have a 5-foot buffer, either fence or evergreen trees. We have a 6-foot fence surrounding our site, so we comply with that. The landscaping on page 57 of that tab N is where it says that you need suitable landscaping. There's no standards, but suitable. We have a lot more than these other dealerships, as I said. The height doesn't apply because there's no building in the design commercial district. The performance standards, 12.9, are the exact same standards as in the design industrial. No odor, no noise, no waste, and so forth. But what's very significant to your consideration is page 63 of this exhibit, which are the architectural design standards that would apply to a building in your design commercial district. There are no such standards in the design industrial district. So what I'm saying is, if this building was in the design, well, first of all, it can't be in the design commercial because you can't readily have a building. Look at the odd configuration with Martell's here. This is the design commercial starts here and goes west. So between Martell's and our open space access easement, there's really no room for a functional building. So we have to have the building in the industrial area. But if there was, the difference is, take a look at the design standards in the design commercial. You can control building orientation, building materials, building facades, windows, doors, roofs, trademark buildings. Commissioner Randolph talked about a trademark building. That's not allowed in the design commercial, but it is allowed in the design industrial. We don't have these standards for a building in the design commercial. So it's a different ball game if you're in a design industrial. In a design industrial, that building design is not governed by your specific regulations. So I would maintain to you that the technical requirements of your regulation have been adhered to in our application. Now, the next thing you have to look at in your decision is what the special exception regulations say, because this is, you have a special, section 27, which is tab O in my handout. And a lot of people, including one of the people that spoke, the first speaker tonight that spoke, said that, made a point of the first condition. It says conditions of approval, 27.4, but really they're standards of approval. And what the first standard is that the proposed use in building and the location of that building and the character and size of that building have to be in harmony, not in harmony with specific buildings in the neighborhood, not in harmony with the size of specific buildings, but in harmony and conform to appropriate and orderly development of the town and the neighborhood, and specifically not hinder appropriate development use of adjacent property or impair its value. That's the criteria of 27.4.1. If you take a look at tab R, I don't know if you have that tab R offhand. If you do, that was the first. There's a few exhibits within that, a few pages within that exhibit. The first one is a description of the various zones in this neighborhood. Shows our property in the middle. Oh, you can see it up there. The white is the design industrial. The yellow is the configuration of our entire site. You'll notice to the north of us, there's a design industrial portion. To the east of us, there is the design commercial. The pinkish or salmon is design commercial. To the west is design commercial, and to the west of that is the design industrial. To the south is the residential area in orange. But the point is, we are certainly in harmony with the existing zoning classification of this neighborhood. There's no spot zoning issue, there's no text amendment that we need, there's no change of zone that we need. The second page of this exhibit is an aerial photo of both our property, and there it is, and the actual existing buildings pretty much. And you'll see just to the north of us, on the other side of the tracks on Linwood Avenue, you'll see all that industrial. It's a zone industrial and their industrial uses. You have a Honda Westport, for example, service center. And then down to the east of our building that's the birthday cake build out. To the west of our site is of course Mill Pond. And then there's the office building, design commercial, and and then the Sturmborough Ruger industrial gun manufacturer. And then to the south of us, on the design commercial section, you could see all of the different gas stations, commercial restaurants, and so forth. So to say that our retail, we have a retail component to this, we're selling cars, is out of character with the existing uses in that neighborhood is really beyond me. The next page on this exhibit really is a description of why we think we're in conformity with the character of the neighborhood. I've got to ask, and the first question is, well, what is the character of this neighborhood? This is the Post Road. It's an absolute commercial corridor, but it's not downtown. This is different than that. A lot of people said that this is the downtown Post Road. It's not. This is the westerly part of Fairfield, next to Westport. It's a neighborhood that has, I don't want to say a hodgepodge because that may sound derogatory, but a lot of different types of buildings, some of them new, some of them old, some of them in need of repair, but it's all different types of buildings. And we're part of that community. So I have in this write-up how we're in conformity. Now, we're not an office building, but the birthday cake building is 5 stories, massively dense. I don't think any of our residential neighbors would want a building with that kind of density on this site. Just too much possibility of negative impact. That's 2150 Post Road. Right up the street, you have Fairfield Automotive Services. That's an automobile dealership. and repair facility. It's been in that building. It's just a few feet up the road. For 45 years, that's been a automobile dealership and repair facility. You have the gas station, a Citgo station. And I think it's very pertinent, is that 2269 property right across the street, literally right across the street from our site. That's where Carvana is now. For 65 years, that's been nothing but automobile related uses, starting with Sidney Brown, Hein Brothers, Jim Trainor's Porsche, the first Porsche dealer in Fairfield, was Jim Trainor on that site across the street. Westport Auto Sales, Larry Torino, I bought a Volvo from Larry. There was the Daewoo Motor Company, was there, Infinity, Hyundai was there, and now Carvana is there. They left because they were successful, not because it's a lousy area for dealerships. It was too small, they outgrew it, and they left. But the point is, they keep coming back, and so I would say historically, a characteristic of this neighborhood is heavy automobile usage, whether it's repairs or gas stations or dealers. So to say that we're not part of the character of that neighborhood, it honestly is beyond me. The biggest argument in favor of my position, I think, is, like I said before, the neighbors aren't here in opposition. They want something. If you recall, during the veterinary presentation, where half the world came out against it, there was at least 2 speakers that said, leave it as a dealership. That's part of the history of this neighborhood. We've gotten, you heard some of the opposition. There were only 4 people today, and some letters that were written. We didn't really have the time to digest all the letters, but look at the approval letters too. There are several neighbors that have sent approval letters here. There's the chief of police. There was the police department. The Economic Development Commission wrote a wonderful letter. The fact that, you know, there's so much tax revenue with little offset is a plus. Donald Hyman, who happens to be the chairman of the Harbor Management Commission, he wrote an email in August of this year. Now, he had some concerns or questions about the bulkhead and about the environmental. He wanted to make sure there's no issues there. But what he did write, and he wrote not as a chairman, but as an individual, he wrote as a neighbor who was in this neighborhood, living across the street for 40 years. He liked the design of the building. He thought it was modern. He thought it was a boost and would be a boost to the neighborhood, and we totally agree with that. So these are the folks that, to me, give testament to the fact that we are in harmony with the neighborhood. Going back to table, let me do one thing. Rob, would you hand out? This is a handout. It's just developed today. My client doesn't take any credit for this. The owner of this property hired a consultant, a real estate consultant, to study whether or not we were in compliance with section 2741 of your special exception regulations. And there's no time for me to go over the whole thing, but I do want to point out a few things. What this handout does, what this particular document does, is analyze all the property, 26 properties, the neighborhood, other than the residential neighborhood on the Post Road, from River Street to South Pine Creek, 26 properties. After the cover sheet, there's a table summary about the architectural style of these buildings. And you'll see there's not one architectural, it's a mix of different architectural styles. We list every one of them in more detail in a moment. I'll show you. The third page is a very interesting page. The third page of this document measures, they took the footprint of the building That's on these various properties, these 26 properties. And compare that ratio to the lot coverage. That's the second to the last on the right-hand side figures. And then on the last column, they took the actual square footage of the buildings and compared it to the area of the lot. And because there was a lot of discussion where we're underdeveloped and we don't have enough, we're not as dense as other properties. And if you can see, if you go down under the building lot coverage one second to the right, you'll see the percentages, starting with 31.28 and so on and so forth, and down through 25 properties. The 26th is on the last line, which is our property. But what it summarized is that the maximum percentage was 36.9. The minimum was 0 because there's a few vacant lots. The average is 17.33. There are 13 properties above average, 12 below. Our percentage is 17.40%. Now, I do want to make a caveat there. When we say our percentage, we deducted the open space because that we're not going to be developing on that. And we took the other, whatever it is, 5 acres or 4.8 acres. And that's the percentage. And we ranked 13 of 25. And then in the very last column, you'll see percentages of square footage. Now, it's true, we're only 49,010 square feet. But what else is in the neighborhood? And you'll see it ranges, the first property is 46% and so on and so forth down. Now, the thing that gets it a little skewed is the number 24. Number 24 is that birthday cake building. And you'll see that percentage of square footage to lot area is 127%. That's the biggest one, obviously. 5 stories, it's humongous, there's not enough parking, there's all kinds of issues there, but it's a big percentage. So maximum was 127, minimum 0, average 34.75, and above 15 below and so forth, but we're 21%. The average is 31%, we're 21%. We're in the ballpark. The next page is we took each property on the south side, the other side, across the street from our property, traveling from River Street in an easterly bound direction to South Pine. And for every one, starting with this first one was 2551 Post Road, we described the property, we described the architectural, or this consultant, the architectural style of the property, and even the parking, because our parking ratio is also comparable. And as well as and the zone, which is this one is the design commercial, and then the second building, which is going on the south side, west to east on the Post Road, William Raver's building. And I'm not going to go through the whole. I wish I could, because there's a lot of things I could point out. But you'll see then 2507 professional offices, and there's a parking lot. And then more professional offices, then 10 Sasko Hill Road. This is an interesting property, right across the street from us. That building is built 40 feet off of the Mill River. It's built 10 feet from wetlands, and it has a very, very small public access. Commissioner Brown wants more public access. And 10 Sasko Hill, Rob, just do me a favor and hand out this. We have 2 sets of these. I think I just have one. This is the picture, just one, give it to the chairman. This is the public access on the building right across the street from us. This access, you could see the slope on this axis, you could see the size. It's tiny. When you look at these pictures, you see how little that public access is. And not only that, but that public access has 2 parking spaces, not 5. And that public access, you could only use those parking spaces after hours, and the public access completely can only use it to public after hours, on the business days and on the weekends. And so that's the type of public access. And there's not been public access as big as public access that we want to give you in this proposal. Commissioner Brown wants more, and I can tell you, might as well not skirt the issue. We can't make it any better. That public access cannot be increased because then we don't have an operation. We can't do that. Parking, rural parking, I'll get back to you on, but I know for a fact, I'm not gonna dance around it. We cannot increase that. But I also noticed there's an article about your pocket parks. One of them was 1,000 square feet. So we're doing what we can with what we have and still maintain a business that's been here for 24 years and wants to stay in Westport. After 10 Sasco Hill.
Fairfield.
Fairfield.
Said Westport, okay, said Fairfield, said Westport. Yeah, it is 7 after, so.
Okay, so I'll just run through these quickly. You can see the strip centers. You see the Carvanas. Now look at the landscaping on the Carvana one, 2269. And then we'll just flip through. There's a few that are the 2149 Post Road, that's the automobile Fairfield Auto Service, 45 years. You can see that property, what that looks like. The office buildings are newer and nicer looking, but it's not all office buildings here. Take a look at this industrial, the veterinary center, the mobile gas station. And then we went across the street on our side of the street and did the same thing, starting on the Westport, on River Street east. Sturm Ruger industrial property, gun manufacturer. Some single family houses, small office buildings. It's everything, all types.
The point's made. We understand.
You get the point.
Yeah, okay.
I'm with you. Okay. All right, so the back to tab O, because we're talking about special exception. 27.4.1. Maintaining we are absolutely consistent with that regulation or that standard of approval. 4.2, adequate access for fire protection. We have a write-off from the fire. 4.3 is the whole traffic issue. Low volume. Is it perfect? Is it ideal because of the curb cuts? No. 2 of the curb cuts we can't do a thing about. The DOT approves its curb cuts. You heard our traffic engineer. I thought he did an excellent job. Landscaping is, we believe it's suitable in terms of, I said it and I'll say it again, on the easement area, get your groups together and let them all agree on the landscaping of the easement area and we will deal with that. As far as conformity with the master plan of the town, that's tab S. And just quickly highlighting that the first section of your master plan or your plan of conservation and development is called. The first ones that we cite for conformity with are the economic development and redevelopment sections of section 3. And we show how this proposal is not detrimental to residential areas. That's right in the plan. It can't be detrimental, but it offers a long-term economic development. And just like Mr. Capasso said, in Greenwich and in, I think it was Colorado and Phoenix, 3 areas, once Porsche went in, picked up that whole area. The next thing that we cite is the truck traffic. We're directing the truck traffic to the highway. That's where they're gonna come and deliver the trucks. There's no on-street parking at all involved in that. That's another section. Then the rest of that is the, talks about the open space, preserving some natural resources, and that all speaks to our public open space. If you're sticking with the special exception, the last one, for motor vehicles, there's very specific requirements. You can't have a traffic hazard. We don't. You could have outdoor storage, like I said before, as long as you have it on the same lot, 10-foot setback. And you can't have any repair work outside, we're having no repair work outside. If there are more than 5 cars, you need that buffer, which we have. So I would suggest that we comply with each and one of these special exception standards of approval. Now, under special permits, we really need a special permit approval for 2 things. One is really the landscaping, and the other one is for the cuts and fills. So I think and the performance, a lot of these standards are the same as for special exceptions. So I think we could skip that for the sake of time. If you go to Q is our section 24 special permit. As you know, if you have 250 cubic yards or less of fill or cuts, you're exempted. If you take a look at our plan, our cut and fill plan, our grading plan C-2.0, we have cuts of 600 cubic yards, we have fills of 2,300 cubic yards. So we have a net increase of 1,700 cubic yards of fill, so we have to comply with this. This is Q. The conditions of these approvals is that we can only excavate and fill pursuant to our plan, which would be C-20. We can't have any slope in excess of 15%, we don't. We can't have a processing of excavation material operation on the site, we don't. We can't have any filling or excavation within 50 feet of the street, we don't. We're gonna clean the property after we're done, we're gonna respread the topsoil. We're gonna give a schedule to the commission, and we're gonna avoid allowing stagnant water to stagnate on that site. So we believe that the section 24 permit is okay, is compliant. Now, T is the last application that we've applied for, which is the coastal site plan, the CAM site plan. And we have our engineers here, but I don't think, if you have questions, the quickest way to do this, and if you have any more questions on the environmental, I told you, Copley here as well. But from the coastal site plan, this is a very technical type of an application. You'll notice that it's done by Land Tech. They describe the activity, they describe the stormwater best management practices. They identify the coastal resources policies on page 4 and the applicable resource policies. They identify the coastal use and activities and standards. And then when you get to page 6, you get to the meat of the situation. The standard is on coastal site plan approval, to the extent that they're applicable, does our development, is it consistent with the coastal policies and goals? This document says it's yes, and it notes in detail why. And the second big issue is there any adverse impact on coastal resources? And that's in section 7A, no potential impacts. This on page 7, it says that our public access easement qualifies as water dependent use, which of course it does. And that there are no other impacts. Now, the DEEP wrote a letter, which you have, I'm sure, and they recommended 2 things. They recommended, they strongly recommended additional parking. That's when we changed our plans from 2 spaces to 5. The second thing they recommended, they said, if you're going to crab and fish, if you are allowing that, then they would have some other suggestions on improvements. Now, the Conservation Commission in that easement has the right at some future date to use that for fishing, but it's really meant to be passive. As far as getting boats, kayaking and other boats, by your harbor management plan, you can't have jet skis in there, you'll kill yourself going under the bridge anyway. There's no at high tide, you can't fit under the bridge. So it wasn't really meant, just like 10 Sasko Hill Road was a public easement for passive recreation, looking at the river, sitting down and absorbing the beauty. That's what it was meant to be. So that is that coastal plan. The last, well, two last things quickly. I was gonna comment on more people, but I think I want to, on Exhibit U, talk about a case. I cite the case of Sasko Associates versus Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. It's a 2019 case. It's a Superior Court case, but it's written by Judge Radcliffe. And I've got to tell you, Judge Radcliffe, there's no more knowledgeable judge, including Superior Court judges, Supreme Court judges, than Judge Radcliffe. He is an expert in review. So he recites what is black letter Connecticut law anyway. And what he says in this case recites black letter Connecticut law, which controls your decision-making process. On page 3, he's noted that the word special permit and special exception, and we're dealing with both in this application, they're used interchangeably, so they're the same standards of approval. He said when a commission is sitting on a special permit and special exception permit, the law dictates that your jurisdiction is limited to what the statutes say. And what it says is on the second half of the column, second column on page 3, that when deciding a special permit or special exception application, you're acting in an administrative capacity. Now, there's very little discretion in an administrative capacity. You're not acting in a legislative capacity where you have tremendous discretion. Legislative means when you adopt zoning regulations or amend zoning regulations, that's legislative. You have tremendous flexibility. When you're acting in quasi-judicial, change the zone applications, you have flexibility. But when you're acting administratively, what you do here, your review is limited to determine whether an application as presented satisfies the standards in your regulations, those specific technical regulations and requirements and the performance and the development regulations, and whether the general standards, that's the Whisper Wind case, says, in addition, you can consider whether the development adversely impacts health, safety, and welfare, and property values as well in your regulations. In that regard, we didn't mention property values other than you have a traffic impact, a real estate impact statement from Mr. Benedict, where he compared property values from properties next to dealerships and properties, comparable properties not next to dealerships. He said there was no difference in purchase price, rental prices, vacancies, and so forth. And that was a very definitive study. He really is one of the best in the business. So this is what you have to do. Look at these regulations and see if we do conform. I do want to say, fine. One last thing.
No, this one, final.
Okay, fine, the final thing. That is, final. Do you recall, well, I don't have it in front of me now in this mess, but you recall, and I sat here maybe 3 hearings ago when Attorney Fallon talked about substantial evidence, and he gave you a case. Well, there are a number of cases. I don't have a case for you, but in that whole, I had a case for you, but it's not. But that whole concept is that speculation. And I've got to tell you, a lot of the speakers that were here tonight speculated about, I don't know, the Volkswagen scandal affecting this speculation, strange relationships, it's a speculation. The Mr. Stanky's letter is speculation. So speculation, conjecture, and general concerns are not substantial evidence, and you are bound to make a decision, either approving or denying, or making conditions of approval based on substantial evidence. And that's all we want to say tonight. And I thank you very much. I know we ran over. I appreciate it. And by the way, I appear a lot in New Haven County and other parts of Fairfield County. And I've got to tell you, I've never seen a more judicious board, planning and zoning. You do your homework. You yell at me a little bit, but that's all right. But you do your homework, and you're to be congratulated. Thank you very much.
Lottery doesn't get anywhere, but we don't discourage it. Don't discourage it. We thank you for that. We thank you for your professionalism. Thank you for your flexibility. We're done, so we can close the hearing. Excuse me.
Are we gonna receive more information?
Well, the hearing is closed, subject to a few items to be submitted in. Listen, I'm not gonna go through them.
We have.
I know, and to the extent that they don't answer questions that how they would answer why otherwise answer in the hearing. So whatever that answer is, that's what it is. There are some points that they've been taking notes of, the information that they requested, we've requested, and they said they would get to us. The hearing's gonna be closed subject to that, and they will answer it as they otherwise would have answered in the hearing. So whatever that answer is, whatever that non-answer is.
I'd like to add the harbor management minutes that I referenced, that's a public record, just like when they were talking about water quality. I referenced it, but it's just the minutes of the meeting, nothing else. I know they didn't do a letter. I could just email them to you, I downloaded them. I actually have a copy.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll make those part of the record. Okay. Those are part of the record minutes. So any objection? Is there any objection to that?
Not at all.
Okay. All right, I'm closing the hearing subject to the additional information to be provided, during the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.